From Kern Government Television, welcome to this week's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting. Originating from the County Administrative Center, located at 1115 Truxton Avenue in Bakersfield, California. Grounded in ideas, energy, and innovation, Kern County's vision is to be a driving force for the world's fifth largest economy. And our mission is to exceed expectations of the communities we serve, changing the way they feel about government, those who manage it, and the services it provides. Today's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting will convene momentarily.
Board to reconvene. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Supervisor Peters.
Here.
Supervisor Scrivener.
Here.
Supervisor Maggard.
Here.
Supervisor Couch.
Here.
Supervisor Perez.
Here.
Thank you. Good morning and welcome to the Tuesday, June 28th, 2022, 9 a.m. meeting of the Board of Supervisors. We will begin today's meeting with a flag salute led by Supervisor Maggard. And please remain standing for a moment of prayer, silence, or meditation, whichever you prefer. Salute. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Next, I'm going to call on Nick Cullen, our Director of Animal Services Department, to introduce our Pet of the Week. Good morning, Nick.
Good morning, Chairman Scrivener, members of the board. I have with me this morning Dobby. His name is Dobby. If there's any Harry Potter fans, that might make sense. But Dobby's about a 3-year-old Chihuahua mix. He came to us last week. He's got 2 bilateral fractures on his front legs. So we don't know how that happened, but our staff is caring for him, and they're going to try to promote as much healing as they can in those fractures so that he can live a normal life. And it's just an example of what the animal services staff does for the animals in our community. And anybody interested in foster or maybe potential permanent adoption, come and see us.
All right. Thank you, Nick. Best wishes to Dobby for a speedy recovery and for him to find foster or forever home. Thank you so much.
It could be worse, Chairman. You've only got one arm down.
I know, right? I was, yeah. I had the same thought. I had the same thought. No, somebody one-ups me right away. All right. We're going to begin by considering the consent agenda. Agendas are located on the tables near the doors for anyone wishing to follow along, so our 2 glass doors in the back. All items listed with a CA above the item are considered to be routine and non-controversial by county staff. Consent items will be considered first and may be approved by one motion. If a member of the audience wishes to comment or ask questions regarding an item on the consent agenda, they may do so prior to a vote being taken. A member of the board may remove any item from the consent agenda and it will be considered in listed sequence with an opportunity for any member of the public to address the board concerning the item before action is taken. A member of the public may also comment on any closed session item, which we don't have any today. I will read the consent agenda items now. So starting on page 2, items 1 through 4, as well as item 7 are on consent. On page 3, all items 8 through 14 are on consent. Page 4, items 15 through 19 are on consent, so 20 and 21 are off. Page 5, all items 22 through 27 are on consent. Page 6, all items 28 through 35 are on consent. Page 7, items 36 through 38, as well as 40 through 43 are on consent, so we'll be hearing 39 off consent. On page 8, all items 44 through 50 are on consent. And so now I'll ask if there's any members of the audience who would like to make any comments or ask any questions on any of our consent agenda items. Okay, I'm seeing none, so I'll return to the board for any questions, comments, or a motion.
Motion. Second.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
Thank you. The motion is approved. All ayes.
Thank you. Now we'll return to page 2 on our agenda, public presentations, item number 5. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons to address the board on any matter not on this agenda, but under the jurisdiction of the board. Board members may respond briefly to statements made or questions posed. They may ask a question for clarification, make a referral to staff for factual information, or request staff to report back to the board at a later meeting. Also, the board may take action to direct staff to place a matter of business on a future agenda. Speakers are limited to 2 minutes. So we ask if you please come forward, state your name, and observe our 2-minute time limit. Excuse me. Before you start, Joe, I do have an announcement. I appreciate it, Kathy. Before we start to consider the consent agenda items and our individual items, which are the items that are off consent, I want to introduce Mr. Fernando Lopez. And Mr. Lopez, where are you? He's right here. Thank you. Who is available and will remain in the board chamber for anyone requiring Spanish interpretation in order to address the board and provide public comments during this morning's proceedings. And so I appreciate it. Thanks for letting us take that pause and go ahead and convey what I said.
Para las personas que están presentes y no hablan inglés, solamente español, la Junta de Supervisores del Condado de Kern me han contratado a mí, Fernando López, para interpretar. Aquí, si tienen algo que decir y dirigirse ante la Junta de Supervisores, aquí en el micrófono. Gracias.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. Okay, bring him up, Joe. Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, Board. I am here today. Wanted to introduce you to three young gentlemen who are part of an amazing group of young people here.
Can you state your name for the record, please?
Joe Brennan. I'll introduce them individually in a second, but they are part of the Bakersfield Oilers. They are a special needs hockey team that plays right here in Bakersfield. They are an amazing group of young individuals, and their message is that hockey is for everyone. They're going to come up and tell you how amazing the experience is. They're going to give you all kinds of information about an event coming up that they're going to personally invite you to, and this is for the entire public. I am part of it as a coach, a volunteer, a fan, all of the above. I work with the goalies on the team, and just my experience with it is if you see me out there, I've got a smile on my face ear to ear, and it's an amazing time. So if you ever want to come out, most people are afraid to even try hockey. These guys right here, be aware. So first we have...
There is the issue of being able to skate.
They're amazing at it, Supervisor. So we have Matthew, who's going to come up, and he's going to introduce himself.
Morning, Supervisors. My name is Matthew Johnson. I'm right wing for the Bakersfield Oilers. Now, the tournament we're going to be having is on July 9th of this year. It's going to be held at Valley Children's Ice Center in Bakersfield, if you know where that is. There will be 5 teams participating in this tournament along with us. They include the San Jose One-Step Sharks of San Jose, the California Condors of Simi Valley, the Valencia Snap Flyers of Santa Clarita, and the San Diego Gulls of San Diego. If you guys want to come, it is open to the general public starting at 3. And we don't have anything else to accommodate to it, but we encourage you all to come. Come support us. Let's go.
All right. Thank you.
Morning. My name is Justin Lopez. Play a defenseman for the Oilers. Like Matthew said, we got a good team. We stay all positive. We don't have negativity. I love playing with them. I love all my coaches. They do a really good job. I love all my teammates. We work hard. We play hard.
Great. Thank you.
I'm Nick Hollingshead. I play for the Bakersfield Oilers, and I'm the left wing. It's the greatest sport I ever played in my life.
Thank you, sir. All right. Thank you, fellas.
So that invitation is open to the entire public, but I'd love to see any of the supervisors come out. And if you want to put on skates, it's even better. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Good job.
Chairman,
Supervisor Perez?
it's also nice to see there's a left wing and right wing hanging out, right wing and left wing hanging out together there, making it work. Zach, we're not alone, you and me.
It feels familiar, right? Supervisor Peters?
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to say thanks to Joe and the Bakersfield Oilers for coming out. I'm looking forward to coming and watching you guys as long as you don't make me put on skates. We'll have a good time.
That's awesome. Good morning.
Yes. To Honorable Chairman and the rest of the supervisors. My name is Curtis James Bingham, Senior Servant, my Lord and Savior, God Almighty Jesus Christ. Now I got 2 minutes, so I got to make sure I can go along and get it going here. I just wanted to say, though, the 1 cent tax It's one of the greatest things this city has tried to take upon. And when it was first brought in, but the Lord gave us a prince, and Sheriff Donnie Youngblood was trying to put this thing together because he had a great vision. The Lord said, cast your bread upon the water because you don't know what's coming up. And he tells us that money is honorable and answers all matters. And this is what the Lord is telling us. And when you look at people and they look about money, they always thinking about, we're going to have to give them more money. But yet, you'll pay $5 and $6 for a gallon of gas, but then a lot of them going to cry about 1 cent. This 1 cent is a very great opportunity to anybody that wants to do it, because the Lord will bless you back himself. The Lord got a lot of children down here, and it takes money to keep things going. And so I pray everybody here can recognize how important it really is to go ahead and give. When they were talking about defund the law enforcement, it backfired. Not with you guys were wise. It backfired. Once a criminal element sees that the government will not back law enforcement that take care of us, they go crazy. And you guys can truly see they have been going real crazy out there. See, so we want them to know that we're going to back this 1 cent, because we got honorable people like law enforcement, district attorney, other people out here is holding up this city. I'm not. I'm trying to be positive with it, but they're actually holding up by bringing down criminals, catching criminals, giving their lives, and things of that nature. And it goes down for you to God in heaven. Will bless you here and when you get home, if you're willing to really stand up and go ahead and bless your city with this 1 cent. It's money that you will have. Downtown, they'll make $1 billion in 10 years with their 1 cent.
Thank you, Mr. Bingham.
You know, so.
Bless you. Thank
just
you.
want you to know, okay.
Who'll be next, please?
My name is Gilbert Tarr, downtown Lebec. My topic is Ridge Route Drive. I've been to code compliance, and there's no open case in this matter. I've been to your office, Mr. Chairman, and I got no call back. I was given a card last time that Mr. Clayton would call me and discuss this matter about trash being dumped in Ridge Route Drive. He never called. The sheriff was called, and he never came. He never come, he never looked at any of the evidence. He didn't even make a report. I find it terrible, and I'd like to see something done.
Mr. Tarr, can you tell me which department Mr. Clayton is with? He's not a member of my staff, and so I'm unfamiliar. It's someone maybe with code compliance, but that is a matter that's different than what you've come in several times and spoken to us about, the matter that had been adjudicated in regard to right-of-way. And so if there's an issue with dumping, then that's a new one, and we'd be happy to respond to that. And so I'll ask I believe my office has your contact information, but to be safe, if you could leave your phone number with Mr. Alsop, we'll address the trash issue for you.
The problem is they've done a survey in this area. I left pictures at your office, and they never called back.
A survey of the trash, or a survey of the right-of-way issue that we've been dealing with for a couple of years?
Survey of the right-of-way.
Okay, that matter in my mind is closed because it has been adjudicated and it went against you.
Say again?
I said that matter in my mind is closed. That was adjudicated in the courts, and
It's not. It's not.
That's
at
my
all.
understanding.
And the problem is the road is 60 feet wide, and there's 9 foot of travel you can't even pass.
I know.
And something needs to be done. And if you're not going to do anything, I'd like you to tell me what's going to be done and when it's going to be done. And if you're not going to do anything, I'd like you to write in letter that you're not going to do anything, and we'll go from there.
Mr. Tar, as I said, this has been thoroughly investigated by our staff, and we've determined that there are no issues out there. There are no illegalities with the right-of-way, and I know that you disagree with that. The trash issue, I'd be happy to help you with, but your time has expired, and I appreciate you coming in. If you'd like to leave your phone number with Mr. Alsop, we will address the trash issue for you.
Well, the trash issue hasn't been addressed. The sheriff won't come out. He needs to be fired, along with your code compliance officer, who has never opened a case. And I've been to their office many, many times.
Thank you, Mr. Tar. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Who'll be next, please?
Hello.
Good morning.
Yes, my name is Tanya Engelbrecht, and back in August of 2020, I filed a claim which the board dismissed as without merit, and it involves aggravated identity theft, felony vandalism, harassment, abuse, and Mike Wilson in 2013 destroyed my home to the point of a teardown, forged checks, no prosecution, no siree. And Stacy Havner, she was indicted on real estate fraud and other crimes, and she was sitting on the Kern County Board of Trade. And I'm wondering if she's still on the Kern County Board of Trade. No prosecution for her either. And we have massive land and water theft. My deed is a piece of paper. It's a fake deed, and that's not a joke. And you must know. And since when does the public record deeds? I'd like to know. And, you know, as far as the identity theft is off the charts, just off the charts. We've got multiple Engelbrechts in NBC, CBS, and of course Film Noir in Fraser Park has 11 of them. And the people involved in this are Patricia Patrick Headland, our Predator editor, who has our phone books printed in China with a Russia email on the back cover of 2016. So, you know, and then she called the sheriff on me when I said, hey, you know, what's up with the Russia email printed in China on our phone books? And of course, we've got lovely Congressman Kevin McCarthy, who was publicly busted on a Russia money election funding scheme, and he's still in office. So I filed federal lawsuits, but of course the federal courts, they just, you know, drop a digit, misspell my name, create ghost cases, and that's every case that I've filed. Dismissed. And I'd like to give a big round of applause to Chief Justice Lawrence J. O'Neill for sentencing drug trafficking DEA agent Diaz to a measly 5 years with a full pension on release. So what does that tell you? And thanks the Kern County Adult Protective Services is forging conservatorships. There's no help. There's only corruption off the charts. So if you'd like to address any of those issues and perhaps get me my money back that was wiped out from the banks and my fake deed, it's fake.
Ms. Engelbrecht, your time has expired. If you'd like to leave some information that you have there with the clerk, we'd be happy to review it.
Okay.
And we appreciate you coming in and bringing these issues to our attention.
Yes, one last thing though. Our public utilities are managed by a convicted felon who continues to get millions of dollars in taxpayer money. Recently, 10 million or 24, it's hard to say.
Thank you very much.
With our editor, you know.
Who will be next, please? Good morning.
Good morning, Dennis McLean. Good morning to the board members, CAO, Mr. Alsop, and staff. I respect the prior gentleman standing up here supporting the 1 cent proposed tax increase come November, but I have a different view. I want to express my thoughts. I've weighed the pros and cons of this increase, and the cons heavily outweigh the pros. The pro side is a no-brainer for the safety of our community. The con side of the proposed tax increase clearly outweighs the gains. In my opinion, increasing the government budget, whether it be federal, state, local, or whatever, leads to creating more administrative positions, bigger government. A prime example is the billions of federal pandemic dollars funded for our public schools. It did little for educating our children, yet expanded the administration body of our public school system. This is a proven fact. Another hurdle for this tax increase raises the question of smart spending of the taxpayers' dollars by the government. I've been attending board meetings for quite some time now, and have seen thousands of consent agenda items worth millions of dollars approved by the county's administrator office and his staff, only to be rubber stamped by the board. One recent approved consent agenda item funded $80,000 to update a homeless database with the city of Bakersfield. That single consent approval could have funded a sheriff's salary for perhaps a year. Go figure. Perhaps the government should downsize and contract out services to private companies that know they cannot operate without a positive cash flow. One last example of government ignorant spending programs is a U.S. Postal Service. In 2021, that department had a net loss of $4.9 billion.
Mr. McLean, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I have one more item, please.
Okay, your time's expired, so please proceed.
I've got a bit of election news. Tulare County finished their ballot vote or tallying last Thursday. I just wanted to inform you to see how proficient your election department head is taking care of things.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask anyone else that wants to speak on the 1 cent sales tax item, which is item number 21, if they would wait until then to speak. Right, this is for items that are not on our county's agenda today. So anyone who would like to speak on any items that are not on our agenda, that's what public comment is for. Do we have anyone who would like to speak? I'm seeing some people move around. Are you coming forward? Okay, very good. Please come forward. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Dora Hernandez Jara, and I come from La Colonia.
What's your last name, ma'am, again? I don't think I caught it.
Hernandez Jara, J-A-R-A.
Thank you.
Jara. And I come from La Colonia in Shafter. And I'm here to thank Supervisor Couch for his support in improving our quality of life, our infrastructure, because our community has been neglected for decades. Actually, it's going to be 100 years soon. We had some surveyors out there that were surveying for sidewalks. And when I asked him, he looked at me like I was kind of stupid, and I threw my hands up in the air and says, you know what, I've been working on trying to get sidewalks out here for the past 30 years. So that's like good news. But I would like the proposed budget, a copy of the proposed budget and the timeline for installation of the sidewalks. And in regards to our recreational amenities, I am requesting a proposed budget for that and the timeline for that. We've been trying to meet with, since Sal left, since November, we've been trying to meet Mr. Couch with your assistant, and we haven't had a meeting with him, and we really haven't had an update on that project. So we would appreciate the proposed budget and the timeline. The property that the county bought, it needs to be cleaned up. It's a fire hazard. And then the proposed water lot that they want to purchase, I got a citation for that for illegal dumping. When they cleaned the lot that the county bought, the contractor put all the extra dirt on top of that water lot. So I need your help in clarifying and clearing up that that citation. And one of the other dire needs that we have in our neighborhood and around it are to have our roads paved with quality material. In the colony, several years ago, they resurfaced our streets with inferior quality material, and they didn't cure for several years. So we would like to have those repaved. And not only that, Manil, San Diego, and Burbank, they fill the potholes and, they just dig deeper. So we really need to have you focus on that if you can allocate some funds for that. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Mayor, Dora, wasn't Jesus out in at a meeting out in
we had
just in the last couple of weeks ago?
Yeah, Gary called him for a meeting at because of the sewer project at Smith's Corner. So we touched on if he could we established some communication with him regarding the meeting for the colony to continue that. I haven't heard from him, and I don't know if Gary has.
We'll take care of that. By the way, when will it be 100 years old? When's the anniversary?
We were established in 1926.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other speakers on items not on the agenda? Okay, I don't see any then. We'll move on to board member announcements or reports. And before I go to the board, I want to call on Treasurer Tax Collector Jordan Kaufman to provide a brief report on property tax assistance through the California Mortgage Relief Program. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Jordan Kaufman, Kern County Treasurer Tax Collector. I really appreciate your time this morning. I know you have a full plate with budget and fiscal matters, but I actually have some good news, which is there is a historic expansion of a state program that will now pay for eligible homeowners' back taxes that have been affected by the pandemic. And so I wanted to just spend a couple of minutes highlighting this program. As you mentioned, the California Mortgage Relief Program, run by the California Housing Finance Agency, has expanded the mortgage relief program to include payment of delinquent property taxes. And the mortgage relief program has been around for a couple of years. But this is really a historic expansion that will allow for payment of property taxes. So eligible homeowners can qualify for up to $20,000 in property tax relief for delinquent taxes. And some information is up on the screen, and as it's indicated, the home can be, the homeowner can own their home outright. They can have a mortgage, they can have a reverse mortgage. None of that really goes into the eligibility requirements. There are some eligibility requirements, though. In general, the property owner must demonstrate to the state that they experienced a pandemic-related hardship after January 21st, 2020. The property owner must own it must be their primary residence, and they cannot own any other property. So it's really targeted to, struggling homeowners that don't have other assets that got behind in their property taxes. There's also some household income eligibility requirements. A household income must be at or below 150% of the county's area median income, or AMI. And a property owner can apply online at camortgagerelief.org, and that is up on the screen as well, or they can call 888-840-2594 to get additional information. And the application that is on camortgagerelief.org, there's also a lot of information on that website, and there's actually an AMI calculator so that someone can see if they are eligible from an income standpoint before they go through the whole application process. So the way this program works is that a property owner that applies at camortgagerelief.org and has their application approved, the state would then send directly to my office the amount necessary to pay all of the delinquent property taxes on the property up to $20,000, which is really a historic program. Statewide, there's $150 million allocated to this program, and it's actually federal money that has been given to the state to run the program. And this money is going to be distributed on a first-come, first-served basis. And so I want to make sure that as many people in Kern County as possible know about the program and can take advantage of it because it can really help struggling homeowners. The state does provide the application and the information in multiple languages, obviously including Spanish, so that all residents have an equal opportunity to apply to this program. And last week I sent out a press release. I've been talking to the media. The information and links to camortgagerelief.org is on my website. I have worked with the Chief Communications Officer, and thank you to the CAO's office. They've already put that on the county's main website, so information and links to camortgagerelief.org. And so this is just another opportunity to let the public know that this really sort of historic, once-in-a-lifetime pandemic relief program is available to property owners for Kern County. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, but I just appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.
Mr. Kaufman. Supervisor Perez.
Thank you. What is the income generally, and is this oriented towards folks that are taking a mortgage hiatus, if you will, that up to 2 years your mortgage can be put off? That still leaves, of course, property taxes to be paid. So can you explain that a little bit or comment on that?
Yeah, so the income eligibility really is different for every county. And I'll be honest, I don't know exactly what it is for Kern County, but there, like I said, there is an income or an AMI calculator on the California website. And then the mortgage relief program itself obviously helps homeowners who have gotten behind in their mortgage catch up. And my understanding is there's almost $1 billion at the state level for that program. And again, this is targeted specifically to the payment of property taxes, but camortgagerelief.org also has the mortgage relief program on their website, and people can apply for that as well.
I meant more specifically, if a person is not paying their mortgage, then the property taxes aren't being paid. So even though a financing company can put you off, you still have your issue of property taxes.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So as a separate matter.
Yes, and again, one of the obviously criteria or eligibility for this is that you have back taxes owed, that you have delinquent taxes. So even if you have a mortgage and you're paying into it, or maybe you're not because you're struggling and you've been impacted, this is an opportunity, and I would say a kind of once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to have all of your back taxes paid up to $20,000.
Thank you, Jordan.
Supervisor Magrum.
Thank you, Mr. Kaufman. Good morning.
Good morning.
Is there an expiration date for folks to participate in this? It's going to take a while for word to get out, and I suspect they'll become aware of it after the next deadline. But
yeah, so no, there is no expiration date. This program is going to run continuously until $150 million runs out. So there's no date specific. It's really about the amount of money that's available at the state level. And again, I would love for Kern County to take advantage of, of as much money, the biggest piece of this $150 million as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Alsop. I would request that the arm of our CAO's office that does public awareness would try to get the word out to make sure that the first people in line for the $150 million are from Kern County.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Supervisor Couch.
Thank you. Thanks, Jordan. I'm trying to understand who this is specifically targeted at. People who own their own home.
Correct.
But haven't been able to pay their property taxes, either semi-annually or annually, or people who have a mortgage but choose to not have an impound account. They choose to pay their property taxes separately, and they've been current on their mortgage, but they're not current on their property taxes. Is that correct?
So the answer is all of the above.
Okay. Now, if you have a mortgage and you're behind on it, you're not current on your mortgage, and you have an impound account, do they have to apply for two programs?
Yes, they are two separate programs. One is for mortgage relief, one is for property tax relief. However, they're both run through the California Housing Finance Agency.
Same website?
Yep, same website, camortgagerelief.org.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Copton.
All right, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other board member announcements or reports? Okay. Seeing none, then we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is item number 20, an item under the County Administrative Office. This is proposed preliminary recommended budget for fiscal year 2022-2023, and I'll ask our CAO, Ryan Alsop, to start us off.
Thank you,
Good
Mr.
morning.
Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Elsa Martinez, our Chief Financial Officer, will handle this item.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Elsa Martinez. We are pleased to present you the balanced preliminary recommended budget for fiscal year 22-23. Today is the first of 4 public meetings to discuss the county budget. As a reminder, the preliminary recommended budget is a document that is not intended to be modified. It is a temporary budget until budget hearings are held and the final budget is adopted in August. Our office will incorporate any board direction received today in the final recommended budget to be presented in August. We will also revise the budget before budget hearings to account for the final fiscal year 21-22 year-end balances and the assessor final rolls. So your board established the guideline in early March, which required departments to submit their budget approximately at the same level as the current fiscal year, adjusted for one-time allocations that were provided this year. As shown on this table, our county preliminary recommended budget totals $3.3 billion, and then this is approximately $81.6 million more than the current adopted budget. The increase that you see in our general fund of $33.9 million includes the cost of the compensation reform completed in fiscal year 2021, which affords employees a 2% step increase and a 2.5 cost of living adjustment. We also included all approved minimum wage increases. Probation is including implementation of mandated programs. And you also will see in the general fund additional realignment funding to be transferred to the Department of Human Services for programs in our eligibility, child protective services, and other programs. The second line on the table is our operating and special revenue funds. That accounts for our departments that are funded with the state and federal funds, and you see an increase of $57.6 million there. And this is funded strictly with the state allocations and federal allocations to fund services in our behavioral health department, our public assistance, and the Department of Child Support. Additional increases are shown in an enterprise and internal service funds. This is accounted for our public works department, our solid waste department, and they reflect the increase of the additional costs related to organics diversion. All the increases are offset in reductions in the capital projects and a special district funds. Those categories have capital projects included in our 21-22 adopted budget that are non-recurrent in the following fiscal year. And again, if you look at the bottom line, in order to preserve essential public services, it is estimated that we're using $5.5 million of carry forward to our operations. Overall, this preliminary budget is balanced, taking into consideration limited growth in our discretionary revenue, increases in mandated programs, and again, the potential uncertainties of our fiscal outlook. I include on your staff report what very smart people are saying. We are preparing. We have a balanced budget. We are living within our means, but we also need to prepare. Overall, general fund allocations to departments are $389 million. That is 1.6 less than last fiscal year. The sheriff budgets have the biggest decrease, and that's because we included one-time allocation for critical equipment in this budget, and we are not including replacement of equipment in the fiscal year 22-23. Regarding property tax, the property tax increase is $8.5 million for the general fund. The assessor has indicated that the estimated values for residential and commercial roles are conservative and are trending a little bit higher. However, any additional property tax growth will first be used to mitigate the $5.5 million use of carry forward. This is our general fund balance again. Most of our allocation go to our public protection area, which includes our sheriff, probation, and our criminal justice department, DA, and public defender. While we're seeing an increase on those areas, I want to assure you that all mostly mandated program, we still have approximately 131 unfunded vacant positions, safety positions in the sheriff department. The recommendation for today is for your board to approve the budget as presented. We will have additional meetings to discuss the budget. We'll have a public meeting July 25th at 6 p.m. for the public. We'll then again talk about the budget on July 26th, and finally we'll have budget hearings on August 30th. This concludes my prepared remarks, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Martinez. Are there any members of the public that have any questions or comments on this presentation? Okay, seeing none, oh, here we go. Come on up. You have 2 minutes, please.
Okay.
Good morning.
My name is Tim Prado. I represent Comité Progreso of Lamont. We've had discussions with Ryan regarding this year's budget, and we have to thank him for meeting with us. He stood 2 hours waiting. Some of the projects that we see want to be funded in this budget is the completion of sidewalks on the Jojo Road in Myrtle and Seguru. This is a priority to our group. We know that there is funding for it already. The issue is regarding the landowner that owns the land for the sidewalks. The secondary issue is curbs and gutters sidewalks for Woods Edition. Woods Edition is between Lamont and Weepatch. And the final issue that we have is regarding the funding for Lamont Park for the remodel of the park. We're hoping that it's prioritized because we're worried about inflation and the costs. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers, please?
Good morning. Gustavo Aguirre with Center on Race, Poverty and Environment. And just to encourage you to consider that safety comes in many ways, not only police, but safe streets, public lights, and all of that. So please consider that with the final allocation. And a couple of areas that I'm not sure if you are including them, but the Community Opportunity Fund that was created by Supervisor Couch a few years ago, I believe it may have some funds, so I'm asking to review that and maybe include those funds for this coming year improvements for the Lamont Weepatch area. And also the Recology company has been contributing to the county for that same area, so please review those incomes that the county have and possible adding those to the budget for community investments, what we call, streets and routes. And just to reiterate Mrs. Dora's comment, Supervisor Couch, we are missing the former staff that you had. That before it was very easy for us to set meetings with your office, and lately we are struggling to get the meetings. So if you can encourage your staff to respond to meetings to get updates on the projects that are, especially those that are on, sync, that are in progress, made in progress. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Carol Bender, and I live in the unincorporated area in District 4. I've been a resident for over 30 years there, and I've been before you many, many times. I reviewed the budget, quite a long budget, lots of information. I'm sure I don't have all of it straight, but I empathize with the reality that we have to live within our means. But living within our means actually reflects some pretty dire situations, such as our unfunded sheriff positions. Another example, 37% of our county fire stations are over 50 years old, 16 of them. 9 of them are over 60 years old. The conditions some of these firefighters have to live in while they're working their 24-hour shifts is pretty horrific. Conflicting reports state that a fire station's useful life is to be between 40 and 50 years, with 40 years being considered useful life, where a building is needing to build new is often cheaper than trying to renovate it. And there's no new station funds for this year. There's no new discretionary county funds this year or last year. Again, I empathize with the situation, but that's the reality of living within our means. Property taxes are the majority of the fire fund. We know what's going on with property taxes. That'll be discussed with the next thing on the agenda. County has different needs than the city. Many of them overlap, but a lot of the social services that are so dire in the urban areas are not as dire in our area. Our area, it's public safety. Our area, it's roads, streets, infrastructure. And the dollars that we need should go to those areas. Again, I'm hopeful. I've lived here a long time. I came when oil was king. Fire stations were being built in the late 80s. Nothing's been built for 9 years. The last one was up in Pine Mountain. We need help, and I'm hopeful. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving next, please.
Hi, good morning. My name is Sandra Placencia, and I am a co-lead with the Economic Justice Collaborative and also a policy advocate with Leadership Council. And we are here on behalf of residents. So we have a couple of topics to talk about: air quality, housing, public safety, infrastructure, and water quality. I do recognize we don't have enough time to talk about everything. So just really quickly on air quality, you know, we live in a really polluted area. We hope that the upcoming year's budget does reflect the needs of buffer zones and notification systems based on the AB 617 implementation from last meeting. For housing, we really hope that, you know, we address indoor temperatures. You know, folks with swamp coolers, they have all the pollution that goes inside because of the swamp coolers, because of a lack of infiltration. A lot of folks that have respiratory issues when the pollutants get inside because of the swamp coolers have respiratory issues. And then when infrastructure, Highway 184, in Fuller Acres, we realized that Caltrans is in charge of Highway 184, but we asked the county to work with Caltrans. There has been deaths. There was one death in last December. We also want proper infrastructure like crosswalks, lights, sidewalks, anything to help calm the flooding as well. The bus stop in Fuller Acres gets flooded along Highway 184. Same thing in Rexland Acres. There's a lot of flooding, so we advocate for more sidewalks. Thank you so much, and we hope to work with y'all.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Kathy?
Good morning, Supervisors. Good morning, Chief Administrative Officer Alsop. My name is Ivan Sandoval, and I'm a community organizer with the Center on Race, Poverty, and the Environment. First and foremost, CRP would like to thank Administrator Alsop, Sam Lux, and Yolanta Alcantar for taking the time out of their schedules to meet with the rural residents throughout this past month. Supervisor Couch, we're hoping that you can join us in the upcoming weeks. We would also like to thank the county for their success on Lytle Avenue in Delano. A couple of weeks ago, residents from the neighboring San Jose Avenue in Delano spoke with Administrator Alsop about the community's lack of access to electricity, as well as the environmental burdens from the 1.5-mile dirt road that they have to traverse to get to their homes. We recently learned that the county does in fact have the right of way to this road. Because it's a good candidate for CMAQ funding, we are asking that you keep this project in mind as you finalize the budget. CRP, in partnership with rural residents, the Committee for a Better Arvin, and the Committee Progresso Lamont, ask that you modify the budget over the upcoming month, keeping in mind the list of infrastructure projects provided to you. Administrator Alsop has a list, Supervisor Couch, you have the list in your email, and I'll be resending it shortly. Unfortunately, I have bad news. Since meeting with Administrator Alsop, the intersection of Sycamore and Edison has been the site of yet another car accident. The community members in Arvin have been asking for flashing stop signs at this intersection for quite some time, and I think it's pretty low-hanging fruit. I believe, though, that the county is studying those intersections, and we hope to have some progress made in bringing those intersections some flashing lights. Thank you for keeping in mind rural residents as you continue to work on the budget.
Thank you. Do we have any other speakers? Okay, I don't see any more, so we'll return to the board for any comments or questions, and the action is to approve the preliminary budget.
Motion to approve. Second.
You have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
Thank you. The motion is approved. All ayes.
Thank you. And as stated, we will be back in the coming months to discuss the budget further. Have at least 3 more meetings. Next item is item 21. This is a response to June 21st, 2022 referral regarding proposed 1% sales tax. And I'll once again turn to Ryan Alsop, our CAO, to start us on this discussion. Mr. Alsop.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. That was a good segue in talking about the needs of rural residents. This agenda item is all about rural residents. And today, happy to be joined by members of our county family for this presentation, our Sheriff, Donna Youngblood, our District Attorney, Cynthia Zimmer, our Fire Chief, Aaron Duncan, and our Planning and Resources Director, Ms. Lorelei Oviatt. For those not aware, we're here today really as a result of our last week's meeting. And in a summary, we at that meeting shared results of our community engagement efforts where we presented those results to your board. We did a review of county efforts and progress in achieving community priorities, priorities that were expressed through those results by the public. We talked a bit about our county's fiscal challenges, and at the end, after a referral was made by your board, a recommendation, we had made also a recommendation to bring back a draft sales tax measure for your board to consider, which is today's item. Just quickly, to not spend a lot of time on this slide, I just wanted to reiterate a couple of things. We're 3rd largest by geography. We're 11th largest by total population. But what's important and relevant for this discussion is we have the state's 5th largest unincorporated area. We serve 305,000 people. It is the 5th largest in the state, and that is pertinent to this discussion because we provide frontline services like public safety and other key quality of life services for those residents. Also pertinent to this presentation is our county's position on oil and gas. We are the state's largest producer of both. We are uniquely tied in a way that no other county in the state is to this industry. Our tax base is dominated by this industry. This industry is primarily located in county unincorporated areas. So a quick review. As shared last week, we engaged residents. We did a community-wide needs survey in July of 2021. We did a second community-wide needs survey a few weeks ago, May 2022. We also have been collecting an enormous amount of information from the public through our website, which is a specific online feedback form that's been up since November 2021, and that continues to collect information and input. And obviously through things like our public budget process, you heard I had a 2-hour meeting with a few groups. You know, those processes are underway, and we are getting information and feedback from residents in all of these ways. I'll turn it over to Mr. Zervis.
Thank you. I'm going to review briefly the 2 surveys that were done. So in July of 21, there were over 800 respondents to a countywide survey, including both incorporated and unincorporated areas. Both of these surveys were conducted via phone and online, and both in English and Spanish. In May, we actually had a few more respondents. We had just over 1,000 respondents to the most recent survey. And the results were largely consistent, although we actually saw a little higher emphasis in the latter survey, but primarily the same needs were expressed. The results that are on your screen now are from the May 22 survey, so the most recent one. And I've highlighted in the box the items that have over 80% extremely or very important as rated by the residents in the county-wide results. And these primarily are surrounding maintaining public safety, retaining and attracting local businesses and jobs, helping address mental health and addiction challenges, and repairing roads. Those were the categories that scored the highest amongst our county-wide residents. As we go through the response list on this second page, these are items between 78 and 72% extremely and very important. And here we see items coming up such as veteran services, homelessness, economic development, and really community cleanup type items. So we see illegal dumping, litter, trash in public areas, etc. And finally, on this third slide, these are items that are over the 50% mark. These are between 56 and 67% extremely and very important. These get more into items such as animal shelters, code enforcement, libraries. We see enforcing cleanup of rundown buildings, revitalization of downtown areas, so redevelopment type, quality of life type issues. But the top line, over 80% is dominated for the most part by public safety, fire, sheriff, 911 response items. In looking at our unincorporated only, as Mr. Alsop had mentioned, we serve over 305,000 residents for all local government services. So they don't have city services complementing county services. We are their only source of local government. So we're interested in hearing from them uniquely. And this next data set is from the unincorporated only areas. And again, I've boxed out the 80% plus categories. Very similar priorities that we saw in the community-wide results, but more intense. So we see numbers that are typically 1 to 2 to 3 points higher than what we saw in the county-wide. And the difference being that these folks don't have city services, so they're relying all on the county. Of note, I would say the item where we see recruiting and retaining qualified sheriff's deputies here is rated at 84%. In the county-wide results, that was 79%. So there's a 5-point uptick on recruiting and retaining qualified sheriff's deputies. Similarly, improving sheriff, fire, and 911 response. So the improving is the key word there as opposed to maintaining, improving those areas. Here it's listed at 83% amongst our unincorporated areas. Countywide, that was 78%. So again, a 5-point uptick with need to improve sheriff, fire, and 911 response. Similarly, recruiting and retaining qualified firefighters. Here is at 83%. Community-wide was at 80%, so a 3-point uptick. So these are the items where we see the most difference. Attracting new industries and jobs. Here we see it at 79%. Community-wide, that was 74%. So again, a 5-point uptick. So we're hearing from the unincorporated areas a much stronger voice when it comes to improving sheriff, fire, 911 response, being able to recruit and retain those individuals, and economic development, new industries, new jobs. This next slide is very consistent amongst the community-wide survey, except when we see helping address homelessness. Here, it's actually listed at 73% in our unincorporated areas. In our county-wide survey results, that was 77%. So we actually see a 4-point reduction in the issues surrounding homelessness in our unincorporated areas as opposed to the incorporated. And that may make sense as we see more of the impact of homelessness within our incorporated communities, because that's where most of those services are provided. Similarly, cleaning up illegal dumping, 69% versus a community-wide at 72%, so a 3% reduction. So much more focus on that frontline public safety and not as much in our unincorporated areas with respect to illegal dumping and homelessness, although they still rank very strongly. And finally, on this slide, again, very consistent with our community-wide results, although increasing animal spaying and neutering programs at 62%. County-wide, that was 56%. So the difference being these folks are not serviced by a city that provides animal control services. So they uniquely rely on the county for those services. So there is a higher need with respect to animal spaying and neutering programs. And then enforcing cleanup of rundown abandoned buildings at 59%. Countywide, that was 66%. So actually a 7-point reduction, indicating, hey, maybe more of those issues surrounding abandoned buildings and code enforcement with respect to buildings are occurring within our incorporated cities and not so much in our unincorporated areas, is what that indicates. So the takeaway, again, frontline public safety, much higher need in our unincorporated areas than community-wide, and some of the other areas of services we provide, are important, but not as much as frontline public safety. In addition to this, we've been running a community-wide online feedback form. Last I checked, we had over 900 responses. We're probably close to 1,000 at this point. And these are 5 questions that we posed to the respondents. They are ranked in the lowest is the strongest. So we asked residents to rank number 1 if it's a first priority, top priority, and 5 if it's a lower priority, and anywhere in between. The top at 1.79, so the strongest response is maintaining law enforcement, fire, and 911 response, followed by preventing thefts and property crimes, and recruiting and retaining qualified firefighters. And then finally, homeless and mental health challenges, and then probation is the last. This is just an example here. We didn't limit our respondents to the 5 questions. We asked our community to provide any other thoughts or comments, and they provided a bunch. There are a few listed on this slide. I'm not going to go through them all, but we definitely are collecting that information and including it in our analysis of how to best serve our residents here in Kern County.
Thank you, Mr. Zerfus. Interestingly enough, the data in the surveys are showing what I think is good news, and that is the alignment of your board's efforts, your work, the work of this county, our department heads, and all of our business areas. Those seem to be aligned with what the public is telling us. So we share the same priorities. And let me tell you a little bit about what it is we're doing about it. In terms of challenges, there is really no greater one faced by any business area in this county, really beyond the sheriff's department in recruiting and retaining deputies. We are doing a very good job working very closely with the sheriff and his command staff to expand recruiting efforts for his department. Taking a local focus, targeting markets, doing it nationwide, revamping our website, revamping the entire really culture that's wound around recruitment at the Sheriff's Department in a way that has never been done before. We're aggressively targeting lateral transfers into the sheriff's office with bonuses, moving expenses, and longevity matching. We are working with the sheriff's department and other county departments to reduce barriers to entry, to figure out, snafus in the recruitment and onboarding process, ways to make it more efficient and better at the end of the day in keeping and retaining qualified people. We are increasing sheriff fire probation compensation. That is not something that we should rest on. That is something that we need to keep pace with as the years go on. Those are competitive environments for talent. And we need to make sure that our county is in a position to meet needs in that area going forward. And we're providing hiring incentives for our sheriff deputies, as all of your board knows very well. That's an effort that you led. Addressing community needs and priorities, we're diversifying. We're doing the work in the economy through efforts like B3K, through renewable energy, doing to the extent that we can, protecting our oil and gas industry, our ag industry, also doing things like logistics, advanced aerospace, advanced manufacturing, and becoming a national leader in carbon capture technologies. Those are all things that we are doing. That work, those are long-term plays, but we're doing the work, is my point. We're using one-time federal funding to expand funding for homeless bed capacity and outreach and mental health support, to reopen libraries across the county, to do major park improvements. We've got a slew of grants. Lamont was mentioned earlier. We're using smartly a lot of grant money and one-time funding to really provide benefit to the community in a tangible way. We're using, again, state and federal funding to add emergency shelter operations and mental health assistance to deal with our homeless problem. Your board has adopted an anti-camping ordinance, which we are putting tools in a tool chest to help make successful, to ensure success there. We're ramping up litter and illegal litter and dumping abatement all across the county, trying to do that as smartly as we can. Achieving cost efficiencies. I don't have to tell everybody that we just cut about $60 million in spending out of the county budget over the last 4 years to align our spending with the revenues that we have so that we can live within our means. All of the departments participated in that. It was not without stress and a lot of hard work, but this is where we are. Lean Six Sigma projects. We have a ongoing Lean Six Sigma program. Not only are we onboarding county staff and training them in these methods and in this art to make sure that we continue to build a culture in this organization that is focused on being lean, being efficient, and saving money and providing better outcomes for our customers. This program, since I've been here as your CEO, has saved the county $20 million. These projects, we've applied Lean Six Sigma to solve county problems that have resulted in a savings of $20 million and a savings of a little over 101,000 employee hours saved through the Lean Six Sigma process. This is ongoing. We just had an event last week where we're having departments compete against one another. We're keeping this alive and well in the county as we go forward. We reformed countywide compensation structures for all employee bargaining units at the end of last year. Your board did this. That was essential in getting our county in a better position to keep pace with wages. We were not able to do that under the old system. Your reforms are the most significant reforms to any compensation structure that I know of any of the other 57 other counties in this state. It was significant. I thank our union and labor partners for their participation. This is a good thing for the county. You're doing the work. Your Board of Supervisors in 2007 reformed employee pension benefits to the lowest legally allowed in this state by law, and they're the lowest of any other county, the lowest pension payout of any other county in the state. Now, that was a tough but courageous decision and the right one. You have put us on a pathway to dealing with our unfunded pension liability in 12 years because of that decision. Going to a pension system that's fully funded. You're doing the work. Our fire contracts with other cities, that wasn't fun, having to go out and tell other cities, hey, we need your help in addressing a $10 million deficit. We're not getting fully reimbursed for the services that we're providing you. Your board set that in motion. The fire department was involved, and we went out and fixed that. We're doing the work. And your fire chief, my office working with him closely, has implemented the vast majority of all the recommendations that have been provided in the Center for Public Safety Management study that your board commissioned several years ago to find efficiencies and cost savings within the fire department. So we've got a lot of challenges. Our resources are extremely limited. It's limiting our ability to make progress and meet these needs. We're living prudently within our means currently. And I would say that that's not good enough for this county and the needs that we have. Sacramento regulations and unfunded mandates continue to cost the county millions of dollars. In fact, it's been over $500 million in revenue, discretionary revenue, that we have lost as a county, specifically due to Sacramento decision-making over the last 10 years. And I will talk about that in a second. The county $3.3 billion budget includes only roughly $392 million in discretionary revenue. The rest are state and federal mandated programs that simply flow through the county and are doled out. $392 million in discretionary money. It's an amount that experienced significant reductions in prior recessions, and it's been largely stagnant for the past 7 years, and I'll talk about that in a second. We are relying on one-time federal and state money, which is not sustainable long-term. And unique to this presentation and my comments, we are uniquely a large, unincorporated area population. And across a wide spanning county, 8,000 square miles, third biggest in the entire state. And that means something, again, in the context of the discussion today. Our discretionary revenue, largely stagnant. These bars show our total discretionary revenue that we collect, that your board has to spend on things like public safety and other quality of life services every year going back to 2014-15. The blue bar, the blue part of the bar, are property tax revenues. The orange part of the bar are sales tax revenues. Sales tax revenue and property tax revenues make up 90% of your board's discretionary revenue that you have available in any given year to spend on important quality of life things and to spend on things that the public deems important. What I wanted to show you here is over the last 7 years, our discretionary revenue is actually negative 6%. It has decreased by 6%. And when we adjust that for inflation, it's actually decreased 31% in real buying power when adjusted for inflation. And that is a problem. And let me tell you why this is happening. Well, before I tell you why, we've broken it down into per capita. This is a new chart. We didn't have it last week. But in 2014-15, your board, through your budget, was spending $476 million per resident in this county, per capita. Today, we're spending $317 per capita. It is a decrease of 33% over the last 7 years. Next slide. Comparatively, we talk about where other counties are, and we talk about our assessed valuation comparing to other counties. 73% of our total discretionary revenue is property tax revenue, and assessed valuation in this county forms the basis of that in any given year. California counties on average over the last 7 years has seen their assessed valuation grow by 38% on average. The 8 counties that share a border with Kern have seen their assessed valuation grow 36% on average since 2014. All the other Central Valley counties, 45% over the same period. And we're last. This slide shows you that over the last 7 years, Kern County's cumulative change in assessed valuation is 3.9%. The orange bar on this chart shows you the growth that our county enjoys. So total assessed valuation for the audience is the value, the dollar value of all of the properties in our county, whether they are in unincorporated areas or incorporated cities, whether they're homes or farms or oil and gas properties or other businesses. Growth in that value, 3.9%. If the orange bar is representative of home values going up, that there's other commercial properties going up. But look at the bottom bar. The bottom bar, which is the dark blue bar, shows that is just strictly oil and gas property valuations. Oil and gas property valuations in this county have decreased over the last 7 years, 64%. If you look at that bar and you see the sharp drop, we're pumping and we go. It was actually a little higher the year before. It drops down, sharp, precipitous drop when oil sees a drop in the price per barrel from 100 to down to 35. The price per barrel starts coming back up. We're waiting to, make sure that it gets to a price where it pencils out for our oil producers to start drilling. We're seeing those valuations tick back up with the increasing prices. The state comes in right around the middle of that line, says they're going to drive our oil and gas industry into extinction in 15 years. And in fact, we're going to end fracking and we're not going to issue any permits. You see it plateau and you see it decrease. And by all accounts, and in our view, this number is going to continue to go negative in future years. It's going to get even lower. That line is pulling down our overall growth in total assessed valuation, which is why we are at 3.9%, which is why we're the last of all 58 counties in growth. And why is that? And why are other counties seeing double-digit growth? Because they are not tied to the oil and gas industry the same way our county is. A dollar value on that same line over the same period with a baseline in 24-14. We took in $103.9 million in property tax revenue that was specifically generated from the oil and gas industry. The very next year, we lost 39 million of that. The year preceding, or the year subsequent to that, 61 million, and so on, all the way to 2021, where in 2021, we lost $66.8 million in tax revenue that is provided by the oil and gas industry. If you add that up over the last 7 years, it is a whopping total of $379.9 million in property tax revenue our county has lost from oil and gas, specifically due to the regulatory climate, for the most part, in the state of California today. So when people talk about, hey, it's growing by 3.9%, your assessed valuation, keep in mind it's the last of all 58 counties, but where is that growth happening? This chart shows you it's happening in the cities. It's not happening in county unincorporated areas. The green is the county unincorporated area. County unincorporated areas are actually down -7%, just county unincorporated areas in growth in assessed valuation. But look where the growth is happening. If you look at Shafter, which is the far right, the biggest bar, if you think about the Wonderful Company and all the work that they're doing out there, if you think about all the home building that's going in along 7th Standard Road out in Shafter, That's what you see there. That's that spike. All of this other this is where the growth in our county is happening. It's in the unincorporated areas. It's not in unincorporated areas. When we meet with labor, we talk about counties of comparison. Last week, I showed you, there was a different version of this chart. I thought this would make it easier. So when we talk about counties of comparison, I typically get a list from our labor friends when we're talking about, hey, you got to meet these other counties on wages, or you've got to meet these other counties on benefits, or you've got to do these other things. And it's usually Ventura, Tulare, Santa Barbara, Fresno, LA, San Luis, Sacramento, San Joaquin. Look at their growth and assessed valuation since 2014. And look at Kern's. It's the green. There's no comparison. Look at CPI, which is the red line going across. They're way ahead of CPI. We're way below. There is no comparison in the counties of comparison. And I also made a note that in addition to that great growth in property tax revenue, each of these counties, except for 3, have done a locally dedicated sales tax measure of their own, which is separate. Obviously, Kern is one of those, but Ventura is one of those, and San Luis is one of those. The rest have also done a locally dedicated sales tax measure on top of all this growth. So sales tax, Bradley Burns, 7.25 is the base state sales tax rate. We get a percentage of that back, a percentage and a quarter. A quarter is dedicated to transportation projects. The percent that we get back is what all cities and counties get back. Sales tax revenue collections account for roughly 13% of our total discretionary revenue. California counties on average the last 7 years have seen a 66% average increase in collections, 57% increase for the 8 counties around Kern. We're the 6th lowest county in sales tax collections. We're 19% in growth over 7 years. I've compared ourselves to the increases in sales tax collection growth to cities within our county. Those are all different pies and different amounts, but you see the growth happening. People are shopping for general goods in incorporated cities in our county, not in county unincorporated areas. We're 6th lowest. This chart is demonstrative of the county's unique position, again, in oil and gas, that most of these other cities, in fact, most of all of them, don't share. It's really apples and oranges in terms of tax base. This chart shows you, again, applying the counties of comparison. Typically, we get a list of counties. Hey, look at what these other counties are doing. Look at their growth in just their 1% Bradley Burns sales tax collections. San Luis Obispo, which is at the far left, they've actually had fewer sales tax collections than we have, oddly enough, over a 7-year period. They're right about keeping pace with CPI. But look at their assessed valuation. Look at the growth in their assessed valuation in the circle above it. I'd argue they don't need it. They have a 7.25 base sales tax rate, which I've put here. They have not done a locally dedicated measure. Not sure they need it. Look at that growth in AV. So Kern's represented in the green. Look at all the other counties and their growth. I've noted Ventura is the only other county in this list who has the base sales tax rate of 7.25. But look at their growth in their Bradley Burns. It's 67.6% the last 7 years. And look at their growth in AV, 29.5. Our growth in AV is 3. Their growth, in other words, they don't need it. They don't need it. My point is that in Kern, we are in a unique position, and again, this is representative of our tie into oil and gas. So this final chart, or near final chart, and this is important data, and so we want to present everything. This is an important meeting, and this is important data, so thank you for your patience. This chart shows city versus county sales tax sources. City of Bakersfield, Kern County. What this chart shows you is that residents are generally shopping in cities. They're shopping for general goods in cities. They are not shopping in county unincorporated areas predominantly for these goods. County sales tax is mostly collected through the travel industry, large travel plazas located around the county, and business-to-business transactions in county unincorporated areas. The third group of bars and the 27% that I've circled there is representative of oil and gas and ag. It shows you the county's unique position. The green, light green bar is the city of Bakersfield. They do not share the same position that we do. It's a different tax base. The next one over, the next circle, shows you where we're collecting from fuel stations. Again, large travel plazas around the county, lots of visitors flowing through the area and filling up at these places. The next batch over, the third circle, the 6% shows you, again, makes my point, people are not shopping in an unincorporated area. They're shopping in incorporated cities. And I want to note, because it's important on this chart, sales tax is not applied to groceries. Groceries and food are exempt. Candy, snack food, bottled water, groceries, sales tax is not applied to those. Sales tax is not applied to rent. Sales tax is not applied to utilities. Sales tax is not applied to medicine or prescription medication. Sales tax is not applied to pet food, livestock feed, seeds, plants, fertilizer, and a whole host of other things. It's important to point out in the context of this particular chart. Hand it over to Jim.
Thank you. This is going to walk through a few extra slides here. So talking about sales tax rates throughout California, of California's 58 counties, 34, or roughly 58%, have done a local sales tax measure of some sort. 31 of those 34 have applied it countywide, meaning it overlays incorporated and unincorporated jurisdictions. So only 3 counties, Del Norte, Santa Cruz, and Yuba counties, have done an unincorporated only local sales tax, which is what we're talking about here in Kern County today. Of the cities, of the 482 cities in California, 92%, 444 of them, have done some type of local sales tax option. And here in Kern County, 11 cities have adopted a 1% local sales tax. That includes Arvin, Bakersfield, Delano, Ridgecrest, Taft, and Wasco. That accounts for almost 60% of our population in Kern County. And really, I would argue that it impacts much more than 59% because, as Mr. Alsop had just explained, those folks living in unincorporated areas of Kern County are shopping primarily in incorporated cities, and largely in these incorporated cities that have already adopted a local measure, but they don't see the benefit from the services that local tax is providing. This next slide, although somewhat busy, shows a distribution of sales tax rates throughout California. And really the item of note here is the far left 5.92%, which is circled, and that is the base sales tax rate. So what this is showing you is that only 5.9% of California's population resides in an area with no local sales tax option. So although, as I had mentioned, it's 34 of 58 counties, most of the counties that have not done a local sales tax option are very small counties, mostly in Northern California. So when we look at the actual population distribution throughout California, 5.92% reside in an area with no local sales tax option. That includes Kern County's unincorporated area. So we're a large part of that 5.92%. And again, I'd argue that most of those folks, especially in our example, shop in incorporated areas that have a local sales tax option in place already. So we talked a lot about fiscal challenges. Mr. Alsop walked through a variety of slides, sales tax, property tax, and this isn't new information to the public. In fact, I threw up a few articles here that were run within the last year or so about some of the fiscal challenges facing the county, impacting library funding, impacting the sheriff's office, discussions about the option for a local sales tax. There's been a number of articles written since last Tuesday that would complement those as well. When we polled residents throughout the county to see if they understood the fiscal challenges that the county faces, we largely found that they did. In fact, if you look at this slide, these are survey results from both the 21 and 22 survey, and they both, in the 21 survey, 82% of our countywide respondents indicated that the county had a need for additional funding. And when we redid that poll a couple months ago in May, that need was up to 85%. So it's not a matter of educating the community that there is a need. There's largely an understanding that the county is in need of additional funding. When we looked at our unincorporated only residents, we then see that same consistent 85%. But what we see here is that the great need had been 51%, and in the unincorporated responses, we see the great need at 56%. So there's more intensity in these responses with the understanding that the county is in need of additional funding. So we did ask residents or respondents to the survey, and this is the unincorporated only response, if they would be interested in a potential unincorporated only local funding measure with a simple majority vote to meet these unmet needs. 64% indicated that they would, with 40% definitely yes, and 5% in that undecided category. So last Tuesday, we presented much of the same data to your board, and a referral was made to bring back a draft measure. And that measure has been drafted between County Counsel's office and the County Administrative Office and included in your agenda today. This measure includes some key points here that I'm going to review. The measure is to meet residents' priorities with funding that cannot be taken away by the state. So we are looking at law enforcement, 911 response, fire, property crime prevention, industry and jobs, mental health and addiction, homelessness, roads, etc. This is a general purpose measure, so it's not a special measure, meaning it's not dedicated to a specific use, but it is intended to be used for the priorities that were highlighted in the needs assessment in the community and are listed here and included in the ballot measure that's been drafted for your review. 100% of the funds stay local. None of this money, other than the cost to administer the tax, which the State Board of Equalization does on our behalf, or the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration, everything outside of that stays locally and would be used locally. This is a 1 cent per $1 spent, collected in unincorporated areas only. And again, if you recall the slide that talked about our tax base, this is primarily business-to-business transactions and those large travel plazas. This measure would be voted on only by unincorporated voters, and it would be used to fund vital services in unincorporated areas. So this money is not going to provide direct services in incorporated cities, including Bakersfield. This is going to fund services in places like Oildale, the Kern River Valley, East Bakersfield, Rosedale, Boron, Rosamond, Lost Hills. We heard some folks from Lamont and Fuller Acres here. Mexican Colony was here today. Those are the areas that would be benefiting from this measure. The measure as drafted includes some key accountability provisions. It includes a citizens oversight committee that your board would make some decisions on how that's constructed between now and November. It includes audits, both by the independently elected Kern County Auditor Controller and also subject to audits by the county's independent certified public accounting firm in the annual audit. There are some key transparency measures. These funds would be separately budgeted and documented in the county budget by the CAO. They would be standalone financial reports. that would be published, compiled by the auditor controller and published online and publicly distributed, and then online public disclosure of all budgeting, revenues, and expenditures. So very transparent measures with respect to the use of these potential funds. The proposed ballot title and summary has been prepared by our office in consultation with County Council. It is titled the Unincorporated Kern County Public Safety Vital Services Local Control Measure. And it reads, to maintain vital local services such as law enforcement, fire, medical emergency, 911 response, crime prevention, recruiting, retaining firefighters, sheriff's deputies, attracting industry, jobs, addressing mental health, addiction challenges for government use, shall the measure be adopted establishing a 1-cent sales tax in unincorporated Kern County, providing approximately $54 million annually until ended by voters, requiring audits, oversight, public spending disclosures, and no money for the state. That concludes our presentation. I'm going to pass it back to Mr. Alsop.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Zerfus. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Sheriff Youngblood.
Good morning, Chairman of the Board and members. I'm going to try and decipher what they just said in a much shorter version and what it really means to us in the Sheriff's Office. 4 years ago, I stood in front of this board and asked the board to put a 1-cent sales tax on the ballot because the city did, and we knew what the ramifications were. At that time, I told this board that in just a couple of years, it's now 4 years, we would not be able to fund deputy sheriffs in our patrol and our substation areas to the sufficient degree, and we're there. I know this board receives phone calls every single day, as I do, from citizens in Ridgecrest, Rosamond, Fraser Park, Delano, Arvin, Lamont, Kern River Valley, angry because deputies are not responding in a timely fashion. And what that does, people stop calling, which makes the crime rate go down. And it makes it look like the need isn't there. But people are frustrated, very frustrated with me as the sheriff, with you as the board, with the way we're governing our county. We know that we're doing everything that we can do, but from a citizen in Kern River Valley, they don't quite get it. I'm going to tell you I'm not here to advocate a 1-cent sales tax. What I am here is to advocate to allow the citizens to vote on it and let them choose the level of public safety, level of service they want out of their county government. What this is going to mean to the county residents in Ridgecrest, we closed their jail. I fully intend to open that Ridgecrest jail with proper funding from the 1-cent sales tax. Staffing levels, we're down 127 deputy sheriffs, 121 detention deputy sheriffs, and 112 civilians. I fully intend to staff each and every one of those positions. That would fill up our substations in Boron, Rosamond, Fraser Park, Delano, Kern River Valley, and local patrol. Boron used to have 5 deputies. Boron has 0 deputies assigned full-time. A gang unit. As you know, we disbanded our gang unit just a couple of 3 years ago. What has happened to our violent crime? We're seeing violent crime like we've never seen before, not only in our county, but in our state, and quite frankly, in our country. The gang unit is used to keep those gangs on edge, to stay where they are afraid to go out and do the things that they're doing right now. In our community right now, there is no fear of consequences from law enforcement or from being arrested. There is no fear. And when you have no fear of consequences, you get anarchy, which is what we're basically seeing in our streets. Our narcotics unit, people are dying from fentanyl. We had 180 deaths last year from fentanyl alone. Our narcotic unit is less than half of what it was. Now, part of the problem is, a lot of the problems the state of California has basically decriminalized a lot of things, sold us a bill of good. Remember Prop 47, which minimized possession of meth, heroin, and opiates, fentanyl, to make them misdemeanors. And the title and summary of that bill was Safe Neighborhoods and Safe Schools, which we all voted for because we didn't understand the bill. and now we're where we're at. We've eliminated our school resource officers. We all know how important it is today to have police officers in our schools as mentors and for security. We've eliminated our SROs. I fully intend to reestablish those with the 1 cent sales tax. We met with the Wasco City last week, and we told Wasco, we will not be able to fulfill your contract. We're not giving you 6 months notice, but what we're telling you is in a very short period of time, at the rate we're going to have to give you notice that we can no longer provide police services for the city of Wasco. They know, establishing their own police department, they won't be able to hire police officers either. I get asked every day, if we can't hire police officers, how are you going to do this? We're being very innovative with the county administrative office, with my management team on what we can do to recruit people to come to this county. As an example, at the CAO's office now, they have a proposal from me to pay up to $2,000 to a deputy sheriff that lives in the substation that they serve. That sounds like a lot of money, but at $6 a gallon, the car we give them to drive to Ridgecrest every single day for their shift, at the end of the day, we're making money and we're paying them instead of the gas. Doesn't that make sense? That's what community-oriented policing is all about, living in the community that you serve. CCWs, we know what the Supreme Court did this week was a good thing from my standpoint, but it's going to cause an increased workload. Right now, I can't process the CCWs that are applied in our county before that ruling. I need 3 more full-time staff to help us do that. People are frustrated when they apply for a CCW and they can't get it because we can't get it done in time. The homelessness, we have 2 jails that are sitting empty today. It was just 3 years ago I stood in front of you telling you we're releasing everyone early because we didn't have room in our jails. Max Mead is sitting empty. Laredo Minimum is sitting empty because I have no staff. If we had staff in those jails, the quality of life issues that we're facing we could deal with. I want to establish a team to work with the homeless, to give them the opportunity to ride to the shelter. If they have a mental health issue, to get mental health to be part of this team. If you have an addiction and you're under the influence, we'll give you the opportunity to go to the shelter and get treatment and get help. If you choose not to, we'll take you to jail. But we have to have those beds. It's called stick and carrot. We have to have both of those to be successful. Right now, no one's being held accountable for their actions, and the community that we serve is very frustrated. Again, I'm not here to ask you to establish a 1 cent sales tax, but what I am asking you is increasing sales tax isn't about we the supervisors, it's about we the people. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'm Cynthia Zimmer, District Attorney. The Kern County District Attorney's Office is also, like the Sheriff's Department, facing unprecedented challenges. The crime rate in California, as well as Kern County, has increased dramatically. Changes in state laws in the last 10 years have had a horrific impact on the sheriff's ability and my ability to keep the public safe. More criminals are back on the streets committing new crimes in record time. These crimes, they involve all aspects of crime, from misdemeanors to special circumstance homicides. However, let's talk a minute about the homicide we have seen in Kern County. I think you all know that we have the #1 homicide rate per capita in California. Our governor likes to talk about that right here in red Kern County, that's what we have. But I can tell you, we are working so hard to keep the public safe. In 2011, we had 46 homicides in Kern County. Fast forward 10 years, we had 116 homicides. In 10 years' time, that's nearly triple the number. Well, what is it like to prosecute a homicide case? I remember when I was first promoted to homicides, we had one unit. We did almost all sex crimes, and you maybe had one homicide on your caseload. I cannot tell you how many homicides, 20 or more, that our homicide prosecutors have at this time. It is difficult to walk in their office for the boxes. Murder trials are not the same as they used to be many years ago, where they would take a few days. Murder trials take weeks, if not months. Evidence in murder cases are not a few eyewitnesses. They are civilian witnesses, law enforcement officers, expert witnesses, and they involve evidence like body-worn cameras, DNA, ballistics evidence, cell phone evidence, pathologists. Yet there are fewer prosecutors employed at my office today than there were 10 years ago. In 2011, we had 87 prosecutors for those 46 homicides. Today, we have 75. At our height in 2016, we had 97 prosecutors. This is mostly due to my inability to hire and retain, but it also, they are unfunded positions that I'm required to do in order to meet my budget. So in the last decade, we have seen more crime, big spike in violent crime, more complex cases tried in court, and less attorneys to handle them. While we are optimistic at this moment because violent crime appears to have leveled out a bit in the last year in Kern County, and applications for prosecutors' jobs that we saw decrease during the defund the police movement have slightly increased. We are still at a tipping point. A further loss of revenue to the County of Kern, and specifically to my office, will have a devastating effect on my ability, my future ability, to keep our residents safe. And while we'll always do our best, severe revenue shortages would likely result in our inability to prosecute certain classes of crimes. And we hate that. But very difficult decisions will have to be made about what we can do with what we are given. So I urge this board to send the question to voters. Let the voters decide this November. Let them decide what is critical to them and whether public safety is critical to them. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman Scrivener and esteemed board members. When I first joined the fire department staff 3 years ago, the fire department was facing a large loss of revenue due to oil and gas evaluations. This loss in revenue further strained our budget and put the department into a position where we had a $60 million backlog of equipment. Basically, our fleet of fire engines was getting old and we were not replacing them. So what did we do? The department embraced a culture change. We adopted a majority of the 62 recommendations from the CPSM study. We have invested heavily into Lean Six Sigma. We have looked at how we can improve all of our processes. We broke the mold. We got rid of the attitude of this is how it's always been done. And with the assistance of your board, we have been able to reduce that backlog of equipment from $60 million down to $30 million. We are making good progress. Moments ago, your board approved the fire department's preliminary budget. The department was not asked to take any budget cuts. The budget fully staffs the fire department and adds 23 positions to fully fund our wildland division year-round. Our future is bright, and the department is moving in the right direction. Unfortunately, one thing the budget does not establish is year-over-year funding to replace capital needs and equipment, fire engines, and station replacements at fire stations. We need continuous investments to keep our fire department healthy. Additionally, I want to take a moment to speak to the call volume increases experienced by our firefighters. Firefighters are dealing with 53% more calls than they ever did 10 years ago. Our emergency dispatch center received an additional 42,000 calls last year alone That's 500,000 calls a year. I have one station, Station 64 in Oildale, that's running 6,000 calls per year. That pace is not sustainable. Firefighters are running more medical aids than ever before. Medical aids are the majority of all of our calls. The department currently only has 2 stations that provide ALS service, also known as paramedic services. With additional funding, our fire department could meet the needs of our community, especially our unincorporated rural communities where response times are the longest and every minute counts. Expanding our paramedic services is the direction we need to grow to provide the best service the county deserves. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Supervisor Perez?
Excuse me, Chairman. Are we going now?
No, you had punched in. Do you want to wait? Very good. Ms. Oviatt?
Thank you. Chairman Scribner's, members of the board, Lorelei Oviatt, Director of Planning and Natural Resources. So these previous speakers have laid out the situation we face with these vital service areas, with our current and future tax revenues, but I want to give you a perspective from the economic development and land use viewpoint of how this might affect implementation as well as affect our opportunities. So as you all know, attracting and retaining industries and jobs in California is second only to New York State for difficulty. California has the highest standards of environmental review and regulation in the nation, along with complicated business mandates that push companies to relocate, taking jobs and families to other more business-friendly areas. I'm here to let you know that our competition is not Fresno or Long Beach. It's or even San Bernardino. It's Boise, Idaho. It's towns in Texas that we don't even know the names of, but investors do, like Lender and Conroy and McKinley, the fastest growing towns in Texas. Investors know their name. Investors are moving their companies there. And yet, even with all those challenges, we have found pathways to attract and expand our economic base. Agriculture, oil, and gas, along with our military installations, have formed the backbone of our revenue. In the presentation by the CAO, his focus was on oil, but we all know that agriculture has faced enormous challenges because of water. It's estimated that fallowing the ag land in our basin, in Kern County, we will lose $580 million just from that fallowed ag land as we lose water just in Kern. And the CAO is trying not to pile this up even higher, but I did want to point out that it's not just oil that we face these challenges with. But since the last recession in 2008, and over these last 15 years, we have found strategies to navigate these Sacramento policies, but we always have a gap. We've always had this gap. No matter how many ways we attempt to navigate and bring more industries, industry by its very nature comes and goes. When I was a planner in the 1980s, bagging a Kmart was a big deal. And now we know where Kmart is at, and the last best Kmart in Tehachapi is now closed. We cannot count on companies forever staying as the economy transforms itself. On top, it does that by itself. And so we've always had this stability gap. And we have not waited for Sacramento to help us. Yet we have not changed the dominant policies driven by the populations of Northern and Southern California. And now the Inland Empire of Riverside and San Bernardino have started to align with their policies. They don't have oil, so they're going to align with their policies. We will continue to fight, but we haven't received any relief. Instead, we used the California Environmental Quality Act that they require we do, and the government code for your board to create policies and mitigations that pay for some portion of the gap. While the solar tax exclusion on commercial scale solar robbed us of $19 million a year, we also received $1 million a year for our public services mitigation. And now your board has changed it to a revised cumulative impact charge. We will have a one-time payment that produces $7 to $9 million over the next 3 years. It fully funds that, but there'll still be a gap as Sacramento refuses to charge out-of-town electricity users the real cost of their power. I know there's people who are calling that we stop approving and building these projects, but that also ignores the thousands of jobs created for our local people, 90% local hire, and the $68 billion of private investment money from around the world that's been invested in Kern County in the last 15 years. Rejecting development is not the answer. Self-determination, as we've always done, is our solution. So I want to give you a couple of examples of places that this 1 cent could make a difference that has not been highlighted. So we have consistently required our wind and solar projects that they use an address in unincorporated Kern County to send their taxes or their use tax, the franchise tax board, and we receive 1 penny. And we now require that all large industrial and commercial projects do that. This one policy of your board over the last 15 years brought in an estimated $38 million in additional sales tax. But if we had had this measure, it would have been $76 million. And that 1 cent would have been paid by corporations in France, in Portugal, large corporations outside Kern County who would not even have blinked at the increase on their spreadsheet. But that money would have made a difference to us, and it would not have been paid for by the people who live here. The state is pushing to phase out and ban gas vehicles and replace them with electric vehicles, and we are fighting that. Your board has commissioned studies that made a difference in delaying legislative action. We are fighting. However, EV chargers for these vehicles pay sales tax if they're in unincorporated areas. I have 6 large projects already for fully dedicated electric vehicle travel plazas with restaurants and other sorts of things. And every one of those EV chargers would pay this additional 1 cent. And those would be people who are traveling through our county, the same people that push these policies. Let them pay. Let them pay that sales tax. And the California Energy Commission has predicted that we will need 2,000 of these chargers. The majority of them are going to be in unincorporated Kern County because of our location along the freeways. We already have Tesla, who just put in 150 chargers in unincorporated Kern County. Why is that? Do they think that all the people in Kern County will buy electric vehicles? No, it's because we're midway. We're midway in the electric charging range between Northern and Southern California. So when people get range fear that their battery is going to go out, they're going to be looking at our portion, since we're just over the Grapevine, before they get to the rest of the Central Valley. These are just a few examples, but we have been trying to fill this gap for 15 years. We've downsized departments, we've streamlined processes, we've held off capital investments, and now we have this new opportunity in carbon management. Our oil industries are investing billions of dollars in carbon capture and new types of industries. But quality of life is important to investors, and quality of stability of our fiscal future is important to investors. As a reminder, we will continue to put this policy of having an unincorporated address on these carbon management industries. They will pay the increased sales and use tax when they buy equipment to build the project. They will pay the increased sales and use tax when they create products such as green hydrogen that they will then ship to the Los Angeles Hydrogen Hub. This community deficit we have is unattractive to investors. And we need to find another way to fill this gap. We cannot count. I believe that I have credibility enough to say this to your board. I am on the front lines of putting pressure on Sacramento, and I will not stop, and we will continue to point out how their policies affect the 1 million people in Kern County. But there's 48 million people on the other side pressuring the other way, and we need to be smart. And that is who we are. We are smart, we are innovative, and we find ways. And there will be incremental changes and delays, but we will not be able to fundamentally change the course of California. So instead, we'll continue to fight We'll create a business-friendly atmosphere to support our oil and gas companies. We'll attract new business, and we will determine our own future rather than letting Sacramento set that future for us. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes our presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Alsop. I was just about to ask that question. So we'll now open it up to members of the public, and I ask that you please state your name and observe a 2-minute time limit. So we'll hear from our first speaker from a member of the public. Please come forward.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I'm Barry Zoller, represent Tejon Ranch Company, where I'm a senior vice president. And there certainly is no dispute that Kern County faces real and growing challenges in trying to fund these important public services, beginning with public safety. No dispute whatsoever. But there's also no dispute that the history of Kern County, both on the east side and the west side, has been shaped by hardworking, self-reliant, forward-thinking individuals. Can highlight a lot of them, but let me go home and highlight the ranch founder, General Edward Fitzgerald Beale. People like him who, despite great obstacles that they faced in a new frontier, forged their own destiny. As a company that continues to build upon the legacy that General Beale initiated, and in the spirit of Kern County pioneers like Beale, Rutan, Yeager, and others, both east and west in our county, Tejon Ranch Company encourages this board to trust the citizens of Kern County to determine what kind of future they want to have. We do support, as the owner of one of those large travel plazas, which would be subject to a 1-cent sales tax, which is 1,400 of our 270,000 acres, but yet a significant economic engine not only for the company, but for the county. We do support the placement of a 1-cent sales tax measure on the ballot so that the people of Kern County can decide for themselves exactly what kind of Kern County they want to have, both for themselves and for future generations. Thank you.
Hi, Paul Infesti, District 3. I always have to look at Mike Magger because I know he's my supervisor, but I don't remember the district name, so I have to always glance at the sign. Anyway, I want to say that I was a strong supporter of the 1-cent sales tax. So last time it was on the ballot. At that time, I was living in the county, and I saw how I was living in the unincorporated part of the county in Bakersfield. I'm now living in the city, so it doesn't really matter because it's a sales tax. I know the argument is going to, oh, and by the way, I want to make clear, I am supporting it this time. If it goes on the ballot, I will be voting yes on it. I also want to say that one argument that we'll hear is now a good time with everything that's going on in the economy. Honestly, it's never going to be a good time when you take that argument. So we'll just have to see what happens, but I would like to have the opportunity at least, and for my fellow citizens to have the option to vote for it in November. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Good morning.
Good morning, all. I'm very glad to be here. As you probably know, I'm a former businessman, but I am retired, so I am Citizen Boyland now. Anyway.
Mr. Boyland, your first name, please?
Gene.
Thank you.
Right. First off, I am retired, but I still remember my business principles, and they're called revenue and cost. And I think it's very clear, the facts are that not because of our problem, but our revenues are going down. All the speakers have talked about that. That's just a fact of the matter. Accompanying that is what the sheriff talked about with more drugs, more homelessness, more mental illness, more crime. That's all resulting in our costs going up. And when you have that situation, you're upside down. And then you ask yourself the question, well, what is the county doing about it? What is Mr. Alsop's staff doing about it? I've worked pretty closely with them on a lot of these lean initiatives and been around for a long time. And I truly believe that the county is running as efficiently as it can, given the situation that we've got. So that's the major thing. Costs going up, revenues going down. I think the county's doing a good job of doing what they can. My personal reasons for supporting getting this to the voters to let them decide is, if you're just living crisis to crisis, that is probably the most inefficient way to operate any type of a business, any type of a county, any kind of anything. You've got to get yourself ahead of it somewhat. And right now, we're just living hand to mouth. If you get the money and spend it wisely, you'll get the bear away from the door on some things you have to get them away from. But more importantly, you can invest in what the fire chief talked about in terms of improving your processes, improving the way you operate your business. But you can't do that if you're just fighting fires. So I've been around this county for a long time. I'm one of the few. I've been in and out of here 4 times. So it's my home. My wife is not going anyplace. So it is our home. But I think that the county's in capable hands. We've got good people. And I think this is somewhat of a vote of confidence in our board and a vote of confidence in our people in the county to put this before the voters and let them decide. I think the case is, as everyone's talked about, is very strong, but it has to be made. And so that's where I am. I want to thank you for allowing me to speak to you this morning.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good morning, Board, through the chair. My name is Tim Coffrin, the president of Kern Law Enforcement Association. I represent deputy sheriffs and district attorney investigators. Thank you. I made comment last week, so I won't rehash any of that other than say that we still do support sending this question out to the voters and let them make a decision for themselves. What I'd like to speak on today is, at the closing of the comment period or the item last week, there was some discussion from the board. It seemed there was some hesitation to want to move forward with this until we could figure out if Kern County's interests were being represented in Sacramento, and hopefully that, maybe there's some hope of change coming from Sacramento. I think we all probably realize there's really no hope of change coming from Sacramento in the foreseeable future. Maybe this election cycle will make a little more moderation up there, but I don't see any big changes. But back to the representation side, I not only president of KLEA, but I serve on the board for PORAC, which is the Peace Officer Research Association in California. We represent 74,000 members, public safety members up and down the state of California. And I can assure you that we have a daily presence up in Sacramento. We're constantly pushing back on a lot of the legislation that's coming out there. Some of the disastrous things that we've seen, like SB 2 that just recently went into effect, would have been a lot different bill if it wasn't for the efforts of PORAC and California State Sheriff's Associations and those large groups that are looking out at the interests of public safety. The benefit we have is our industry really shares the values and ideas of Kern County, our conservative nature. That's represented throughout our industry. So we're able to take those 74,000 people that we represent, and the board, our board consists of about 45 members on there. And we're able to take that up to Sacramento and lobby very heavily. We can take individual members from each assembly district or senate district up there and put their members in front of them and represent the values that we hold near and dear here in Kern County. So I just wanted to assure the board that we are representing the values of Kern County. You may not always hear or know what's going on up there, but we are making that fight to head off some of the disastrous things that come out and that we face. And as for example, right now, PORAC's either actively opposing, supporting, or sponsoring and co-sponsoring 26 bills that are going through the legislature right now. Those are just the ones that we're active on. There's a whole bunch of others that we're watching, but some of those, there's a couple good ones, and there's some are really disastrous, and And so we're constantly pushing back on that and making that fight.
Thank you, Mr. Coffrin.
So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Board of Supervisors. Brian Andrews, President of KCDOA, Kern County Detention Officers Association. I come before you today to explain the absolute necessity of adding this 1 cent measure to November's ballot. This will help address, as you guys know, the county's retention and recruitment crisis that we are currently in. You guys have been briefed on this. We've talked with Mr. Alsop. We've worked with our command staff as much as we can. This last week, I've had to shake the hands of 9 officers that were leaving for other law enforcement jobs or other jobs in general, and including lieutenants and sergeants. And we're at a critical tipping point, and I just really, really hope that this measure can be placed on the November ballot so that the residents of this county can be properly served, because right now they're being underserved. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Who'll be next, please?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Nick Ortiz representing the Greater Bakersfield Chamber. Good to see you all this morning. So I appreciate the opportunity to provide our perspective. So our members, your local business community, they understand and appreciate the dire fiscal situation that the county faces. They also know why this situation is occurring. Regulatory policies that are pushing our 2 largest industries and your general fund to the brink. Let me be clear, the chamber at this point in time has no position on a potential sales tax. Should your board put it on the ballot, we'll take it up at that point. But my board did want me to note that we've been monitoring the community engagement efforts of the county, Mr. Alsop's office, and Mr. Zervis in particular, and we'd like to commend the county for its very unique, robust, and multifaceted community outreach effort. The results of this community conversation, as you've heard last week and this morning, are clear. The citizenry, your constituents, want more. Now that the county's engaged those citizens, it's incumbent on you all to figure out exactly how you work with them to get the service levels and the county government that they want. The question of whether or not to tax your constituents is not an easy one, especially in these economic times. In Kern County, we face a real disparity in terms of the fiscal situations of our 2 largest local governments. Just down the road at the city of Bakersfield, they're flush, largely because of a sales tax measure. And here at the county, you all and your department heads and your frontline employees face more years of austerity and uncertainty. So you're all very much veterans of the political process and of campaigning, and I think it's really important to note that for all of us to get up and speak here today, very few of us are actually going to get out on the campaign trail and work to make this a reality. Should your board choose to put this on the ballot, your public safety and employee unions are going to be your funders, your frontline, your boots on the ground. It's weird for a business organization to say that, but that is the case. And so I would really put a lot of weight on what those representatives of those entities are saying to you today. So again, we appreciate the opportunity to comment. Chamber looks forward to staying engaged. Again, we appreciate the detailed presentations by Mr. Alsop, his team, and the county leadership. And thank you for your time and the opportunity to comment.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair, members of the board. My name is Joshua Nicholson. I'm the president of the Kern County Sheriff's Command Association. I watched a slide earlier and I noticed that public safety is hands down the most important thing to the public. Years of stagnant or reduced budgets have severely impacted our department. But I not only come to you as a member of the Command Association, but I'm also a resident in the unincorporated area in District 2. We must be competitive in pay and staffing to other counties of equal or greater than we are. Even the DOJ stipulated judgment says that we specifically requires more supervisors and oversight. Well, we can't hire and retain more managers if we're not hiring and retaining more deputies. It is the fundamental duty of the government to provide safety to the community. Based on staffing, I feel we are failing to provide the best services we can to the community. If we do not make a change to safety, I fear the safety will be worse and critical staffing levels will become more critical. I'm requesting your board send it to the public to decide what type of government they want and allow them to vote on the 1% sales tax. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman of the board and your fellow Kern County Board of Supervisors, my name is Jay Tamsey. I'm the President and CEO of the Kern County Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, representing 1,100 members. As I reviewed last week's presentation and today's presentation, I want to thank Mr. Alsop and Mr. Zervis and the staff for a thorough explanation, and as well as the surveys that were completed in 2021 and 2022 in Spanish. And so we thank you for that. Public safety and homelessness, among others named in the presentation, is a huge priority for our members, business owners, and constituents in Kern. The members in Kern who live in unincorporated areas need assistance. They have the right to it. They have the right to feel safe, and the time is now. I believe every one of my colleagues, hopefully, and my community partners, aside from me, here today would agree with me that we do not want to increase taxes. Nobody does, but our businesses pay enough taxes and sales taxes already. However, the information we've already heard by Mr. Alsop and Mr. Zervis's presentation is compelling, and the reality given our country, our county's unique circumstances with our strong tie in an oil and gas industry that the state is working to eliminate. Sometimes things must be done to take more solid control over our county's financial future. I ask you today to act and send the question to our unincorporated area voters to let them decide and what their future looks like. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman Scrivener and members of the board. Nice to see you all. Melissa Frank, Vice President of Government Affairs for the wonderful company. We appreciate the county's work, particularly Mr. Alsop and Mr. Zervis, on this important and challenging issue, particularly as it relates to the anticipated declining revenues from the oil and gas and the agriculture industry that we face, unfortunately. As you know, there are significant needs in our unincorporated communities, from parks to streets to public safety. A sales tax measure that is implemented with transparency and ensures that funding goes back to those unincorporated areas is a reasonable approach to the budget challenges currently faced by the county. We believe putting the sales tax measure on the ballot will allow the residents to decide if this is the right approach. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Lauren Skidmore, fifth generation resident of unincorporated Kern County. I spoke with you all last week, but I'll just reiterate. There's something in the cattle industry called barbed wire. So in order to keep our cattle from exiting our fields, we also joke it's also to keep people from entering our fields. Unfortunately, in the last few months, we've had 3 break-ins just to our fields for scrap metal and some piping that we use for irrigation. We've had numerous accounts of illegal dumping. We've had numerous illegal stolen vehicles dropped on our property, and occasionally we get individuals walk 5 miles from the nearest town to come and see if they can find a location to sleep on an open field on our ranch. With that being said, Sheriff Youngblood mentioned the lack of response and calls. We are one of those. We don't call. It's not because we don't want to. It's not because we don't think the sheriff's officers care. It's because as a wife of a law enforcement officer, I know that there are many other crimes happening simultaneously that are much more important than trash and some theft that happens on our property. And for me, a 1-cent sales tax, 1 penny of my purchases in the unincorporated area would give me a little more peace of mind, would give my family that's been there for almost a century enough peace of mind. I think it's worth it. So thank you for considering it, and I hope you take this to November.
Good morning, Emma de la Rosa, Regional Policy Manager with Leadership Council. We work with residents in disadvantaged communities, as you all know, who lack the basic infrastructure such as lighting, sidewalks, safe roads, and parks. As taxpayers in the community, residents long to see investment in their neighborhoods for the betterment of their families and communities. Moreover, folks we work with are impacted by the oil and gas industry, forced to breathe polluted air and use contaminated water. While many folks rely on the agriculture industry as their main source of income, it is not without its sacrifices. Farm workers risk their health and their life working in the fields of pesticides and working during high temperatures and seasonal fires. As the board and staff considers a proposed tax on unincorporated residents, many who live in disadvantaged communities, it is important to consider what the economic impact of such a tax would be for low-income communities and must consider what these communities deem vital services. We urge the county to engage residents in disadvantaged communities through various outreach methods, including community meetings and door-to-door outreach, to understand the community's thoughts regarding the tax. As most unincorporated communities are disadvantaged and low income, it is imperative that the county implement a holistic and equity-based approach to community engagement in order to fully understand the impacts and support for this measure. In addition, we raise concern regarding the vital services included in the resolution and in the ordinance. Staff has presented the proposed tax to be a general service tax, not a special tax. However, almost all uses of the tax indicated under 4.18.040 have the possibility to lead most, if not all, of the funding to law enforcement. And the two public comments that were provided by the DEA and the Sheriff Office really emphasize that most of the funds are probably going to go to law enforcement, and it's a general service tax. So is it really going to be used as a general service tax, or is it going to be used as a special tax? Furthermore, the resolution indicates the need to address homelessness without indicating the need to address housing in the resolution or in the ordinance as a vital service, even though affordable housing was also raised as a priority by the survey respondents. Lastly, the resolution calls to diversify the economy by being a national leader on carbon capture. We urge the county to consider the health, environmental, and capacity impacts such an industry will have in our communities. Carbon capture will perpetuate the use of industry. As Ms. Lorelei mentioned, the oil industry has invested in this. Therefore, there's an obvious benefit. And they are responsible for the environmental and health impacts many residents in disadvantaged Kern County face. We hope that the board will consider our comments, and we ask that you deny this resolution and this ordinance today at the moment so that you can consider our comments further. Thank you.
Thank you. Who'll be next, please?
Good morning, Board. Dave Nelson, President of the Kern County Firefighters Association, proudly representing nearly 500 firefighters and protecting 8,100 square miles of this county. I'm before you this morning not to address the board, but provide historical information to the audience, whether they're for or against a tax measure, and provide a better understanding for the need of additional funding and the understanding of the strife that has taken place over the last 5 years. Specific to the fire department funding, there's been several challenges in the last 5 years in relation to funding for services that are provided. The Kern County Fire Department provides a service valued at around $210 million annually. This is compared to other agencies providing similar services in geographics and population. In 2014, thank you to Mr. Scrivener, we added an additional station to that area that was drastically underserved in fire and EMS services. This was, however, without the additional funding required, but the service was needed. The board took a bold step to provide the service needed to the community. In 2017, due to budgetary guidelines, 9 stations were slated to be downstaffed to only 2 firefighters on duty. This, of course, through our community action was averted, and those engines remained staffed, assuring firefighter and citizen safety. Also in 2017, the Centers for Professional Safety Management study was conducted, and 62 recommendations made to implement cost savings measures within the fire department's operation. The majority of these have been completed. In 2020, a cost-saving measure contract was imposed on our members, changing the overtime calculations for which we were compensated, devaluing the earned time off. We also saw in 2020 a proposed station brownout and closure plan sought to further bring the department within budgetary guidelines, and this was again averted through community action and avoided. We did, however, have 30 positions at the time that went unfunded. We also saw over the last 3 years significant efforts made to assure each department is operating as efficiently and fiscally responsible as possible. Implementation of Six Sigma, intense oversight from the CEO's office, with absolute scrutiny of each expenditure and assuring required justification before those dollars were spent. Renegotiation of contracts for the contract cities, not an easy conversation to recover the true costs associated with fire protection and services provided, and renegotiation and restructuring of measures with CAL FIRE to increase revenues associated with the protection of our state lands. Simply put, all measures have been implemented to assure we are operating as financially responsible as we possibly can, and we are standing shoulder to shoulder with our partners in industry who are facing those difficult regulations coming down from the state. So I want to close with saying that we've seen a significant investment in our organization from this board to address our dilapidated structures, infrastructure, aging and failing apparatus, along with a responsible step forward in addressing the compensation which has impacted our abilities to retain firefighters. This, however, does not come free, and we must look at other areas of opportunity with our community that are lacking and also needing attention. This board's much appreciated investment in public safety and the use of discretionary revenues has also impacted their abilities to address other community needs, such as highlighted by our last speaker. Parks, roads, libraries are all areas of continued opportunity in our community. So I ask you this, what is the future of our county? Do we want to remain stagnant or do we want to progress and go forward? Today, and if approved for the ballot in November, we as community members must stand up and support our board so that they can meet the demands that we have placed on them. Thank you.
Thank you. Who'll be next, please?
Supervisors, good almost afternoon. My name is John Paul Lake. I'm the Executive Director of B3K Prosperity. B3K is a public-private collaborative effort to develop a roadmap and investment plan for economic growth and inclusion in Kern County. Thank you for your historical and ongoing support of this important work. Our market assessment, which was completed last April, highlighted the need for 100,000 quality jobs in Kern County in order to lift 50% of the children that are in families struggling to make ends meet. We've identified 4 industries that we believe have the potential to create the volume and quality of jobs that we need: aerospace, energy and carbon management, manufacturing and business services. In addition, we are focused on entrepreneurship and small business support. The data presented by the CAO highlights the recent and projected impact of state policies on Kern's oil and gas industry, and thereby the dramatic decreases in oil and gas assessed valuations and local property taxes. Successful economic development initiatives across the country share 5 components. Number 1, innovation. Number 2, talent. That's our workforce. Number 3, land use and planning. Number 3, infrastructure. Number 4, governance. And number 5, what we call traded sectors, which more simply put is export-oriented businesses. Think of ag and energy in particular for Kern County as being our 2 biggest export businesses. Within that infrastructure component, we include land use and planning, transportation, communication, and occasionally regulations and policy. The need for the development of smart plans, regulations, and policies is particularly evident when you look at the B3K action plans for our aerospace and energy teams and plans. These industries in particular will be more likely to invest in Kern County if they see this county government making wise investments in infrastructure. Both businesses and our workforce want safe neighborhoods, and they want and deserve community amenities and services. These quality of life elements are vital to attracting and retaining talent. I strongly encourage you to be forward thinking about how revenues from a sales tax initiative, if approved by the voters, could be used to make investments in quality of life projects and services, public safety, and also other infrastructure needs that B3K has and will continue to identify and bring forward for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'm Michael Turnipseed. I represent the Kern County Taxpayers Association.
Today is a critical day in our county's future. For the first time in 17 years, I have been joined by 5 board members to attend the meeting today because it's that important. You've heard from board member Melissa Frank, Melissa Poole, I don't like. Board member Holly Arnold was here. 2 past chairs, Brad DeWitt and Jess Frederick, and our next year's chair, Tim Rushing, have all been here this morning to show their importance and dedication to this issue. They are serious about the county's future and the decisions that are made here today. Let's get one thing clear. It's external factors that are driving this whole discussion today. And if you were getting the $70 million that the state has conveniently taken away from you, we wouldn't be here. And nobody can blame you for that. Your board must take action, though, to address the unsustainable situation and you have very few tools left in your toolbox. Your staff has a proposal before you today. Your board is facing a critical vote and needs to do the right thing. I like quotes. And the most famous quote that can be used today is Mark Twain said, "It's never wrong to do the right thing." Teddy Roosevelt said, "In any moment of decision, the best thing to do is the right thing. The next best thing is the wrong thing. And the worst thing you can do is nothing." Bill Ackerman said, "I'm always prepared to do the right thing, regardless of what other people think." And finally, General Norman Schwarzkopf said, "The truth of the matter is that you always know the right thing to do. The hard part is doing it." With this said, Kern Tax's request today, board, do the right thing. Trust your constituents to do the right thing. Vote today to place a staff recommendation on the November ballot. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Hello, Chairman and fellow supervisors. My name is Rick Judge, and I'm with Country Corporation. We are a business entity that has been doing business here in Kern County for over 30 years with almost 500 plus employees, majority of them living in the unincorporated area of Kern. And every day we go to work, we worry about safety of our employees. We have people that work for us that live in majority of unincorporated Kern that have to deal with safety issues coming and going to work. And we have to think about daily today, not how to be profitable, how to help bring new resources or new business to our community, but how do we keep our employees safe that come to work every day. And as everyone knows in this environment today, people to come to work and having a job is very hard to come by. And we have young kids and people that come to work every day that have to worry about people stealing, people threatening their lives, people worrying about carrying weapons on them. And how do we tell these children that work for us, these people that come to our business, that we could keep them safe? Because when we reach out to our sheriff department, as our sheriff mentioned earlier, they don't have the resources to come and to come provide to our sites in a quick and timely manner because they're overstrained. So as a business owner, and as a fellow community member of this community here of Kern, I believe if we could do anything to help our community find some resources, find a way to help improve our public safety, we must take that action and allow the people of this community to make that decision for themselves. So with that, I just want to say thank you for your time. I know a lot of amazing people have spoken today from our community, from all walks of life, and from all sectors of this community. And I believe they all are requesting that we should allow our voters to make that decision. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to speaking to all of you in the future. Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have any other speakers?
Okay, I was going to say good afternoon, but not quite. Carol Bender. I want to correct myself. Earlier I said I was from District 4 because I was for many, many years. I am in District 1. I'm not going to repeat a lot of the stuff that I think it's been pretty obvious excellent presentations from everybody. I'm just a citizen. I don't represent a group. I guess I represent people west of town that are in the unincorporated areas. I hear their problems all the time. I don't know if any of you are on these Nextdoor apps, but my goodness, the stuff that goes on out there is crazy. And that's only one part of unincorporated Kern. Given the voting record of our California politicians, the solar tax exclusion is going to continue. It continues to be pushed out. There's all kinds of new exclusions. I talked about them in what I gave to you all earlier to read so that you don't have to deal with that today. And we can all cry unfair to Sacramento all that we want, but we have to be proactive and not allow our county to be a victim to these unfair government edicts. So what I'm asking for as a citizen, we want local control and we want to have the ability to vote for this. So if it doesn't pass, it doesn't pass. We'll try again. But we need it. It's just unquestionable. I haven't heard any good argument against other than another problem we've had with this before. Wait and see, let's get the language perfect. It's not a right time. It's never a right time. And if we do not do this now, our services are going to continue to degrade. The reason that we're in this problem now is because we allowed them to degrade, not necessarily by our own fault, but because of a lot of factors that were out of our control. Why do we have the retention problem? Because our services are so poor, the staffing is so limited. How do you want to come to a community to work when you don't have enough staff members to support you? How do you want to work locations in unincorporated areas, for example? Let's see. So if you're a firefighter out in an unincorporated area, you probably are going to be the first responder for some scary situations. When is the sheriff going to show up? Well, as soon as they can, to no fault of their own. So not only do you have safety issues with community members, you have safety issues within your safety communities. I don't know if people think about these things. It's such a shame that more people are not here from the community to hear this, because I can assure you if they were, they would not only want you to put this on the ballot, they would be voting yes by far in the majority. Unfortunately, nobody reads the paper anymore. We take our news on the internet. We're Nextdoor app. I mean, that's what people get their news on. They don't know the severity of it. They don't show up for these meetings, which is why I show up, like it or not, everyone. I do appreciate being able to do this. It's important to me. I love Miss Oviatt over here. I'm her biggest fan and have been for 30 years, and you can never retire. Okay.
Thank you,
But anyway, thank you for letting me speak, and I urge you to unanimously say yes to putting this on the ballot. Show the public that you believe it is worthy, and we are worthy to have this chance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other speakers, please? Okay. Seeing none, I'll return to the board. Supervisor Perez is punched in first.
Thank you
Floor is
very
yours.
much. Oh, sorry, Chairman. Thank you very much. It's always nice to see Kern County's finest out. That is what we have really seen on display this morning. And, it's not every day that you have Paul Infesti and Barry Zoller on the same page. So I'm just going to go ahead and say, Barry, it's a new day in Kern County. And I'm going to take that as a good sign, Paul, right? That we care for Kern County so deeply, so passionately. I believe that wholeheartedly. And I'm really happy to be joined today by the incredible talent and diverse thought that is Kern County. I would like to thank our team, the county team, in particular, our public safety leaders, that I would remind you were just reelected without opposition and are wildly popular in this community as evidence, not just in empirical data, but what we know about Kern County. And so to be here on a complicated political matter that I know is not easy for you is a big deal. And it really goes so far, you know, to help this community understand just how serious this is and how much people who are like-minded with such a large swath of this community feel about this issue. So critical to hear from both of you today. Donnie, Cindy, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. This is so important. It's very clear to me that we're at a critical juncture here in Kern County. The strength and health of our present as well as our future is absolutely on the line. I believe it wholeheartedly. And the quality of our life depends on what we do right now. Do we give our residents living in unincorporated areas of this county the opportunity to decide for themselves, to choose what kind of costs they will incur as American citizens, as free thinkers? That is what really this moment is about. I have the largest unincorporated area of all my colleagues, with a population of 113,000, primarily in East Bakersfield. I don't have to convince you all, certainly don't have to convince my sheriff who lives on the east side as well, and my neighbor, that we have great needs there, Donnie. We know. We love the east side. They are prolific, and it is not unusual for much of the country, but because we are based in East Bakersfield and we love it so much, we can talk about it with expertise. Supervisor Peters, you have 41,000 unincorporated residents in your district, 41,000, relying on Donnie, Cindy, so many others on the front lines. Supervisor Scrivener, our chair, you have 96,000 unincorporated Kern County residents, 96,000, in a vast district doing such important work for this country and this globe. This moment is important to them and their future. I know you hear about it probably more than any of us. They expect top-tier services, and they pay for it. They deserve it. Supervisor Maggard, 81,000 unincorporated residents, 81,000. Who would want the opportunity, I believe, to decide for themselves what their future should look like. Supervisor Couch, you have an unincorporated area of 23,000, smaller than most of us, but as we hear every week, with profound need in your unincorporated area. Those residents depend on frontline services from the county, particularly public safety services. They deserve an opportunity to consider the question and make their own choice. As I said last week, I'm so pleased at the work of this board, our administration, our county departments. By all accounts, we are aligned with what we are hearing from the public. It's clear that public safety services in this community are the priority. They are the priority, as they have always been in my history of observing this county, observing politics across this state and country, frankly. Homelessness, an issue, we are addressing it, and I want to thank my sheriff, my mental health department, for being creative in reaching across silos, Donnie. You have always been open to changing your institution, making it one that is safer for your people and better and more hopeful for folks that are ultimately our neighbors, and they're coming back to our neighborhoods. This is a community of fiscal conservatives. Always has been, I think it will be for some time. Mr. Gene Voiland, you are a clear and credible voice as any. And keeping pace to ensure that our services receive the kind of supportive, ongoing funding they require is the issue here, because we are living within our means, Gene. We are living within our means, and I appreciate you very much. This is not an issue that we can continue to ignore. Revenue growth is a problem. It's clear that our county is in a position that most other counties are not. Primarily the way in which we are directly tied to the state and county's energy future. We also have answers for the globe. Thank you to our planning department and the geniuses working hard and creatively in a real hard state to do business in. We are unique among all other counties in this state. We are unique from the city of Bakersfield and other incorporated areas of our county. We have a strikingly unique tax base. Given this reality, current state policy directives and regulations are not without consequence. Elections have consequences, as we know. In our county's case, as it turns out, profound and great and often detrimental consequence. As was pointed out, Kern County has lost $500 million, $500 million. That's ours, by the way. Should be the result of our ingenuity, working across silos, and our willingness to be open and creative. Those should be the rewards of such behavior in local government. We have been penalized. 500 million local tax revenue over the last decade. I think we should all understand that this is going to continue. There's no reason to believe the trajectory is going to take a sudden twist or change. The goal of diversifying our regional economy is a critical one, as it is for any location, although our economy is brilliant, prolific, and deserves support and expansion. The prospect of doing enough of what needs to get done in the time that it needs to get done is just not feasible. I so sincerely and wholeheartedly believe that something more needs to be done. We need to take greater local control over our financial future. We've heard from our county's residents over the past year, and by all accounts, they believe this as well. Importantly, our sheriff, our district attorney, our planning director, our firefighters, our sheriff's deputies, Kern County Taxpayers Association, among other, are echoing exactly what we're hearing from our CAO. Private sector partners that are brilliantly and geniusly successful and talented certainly have something to say about such matters. I ask my colleagues humbly and passionately today, please send this question to our unincorporated area voters. Thank you, and may God bless Kern County.
Thank you, Supervisor. I don't see any other supervisors punched in at this time, so I'll go ahead and make some comments, and maybe we'll get some others. First of all, I want to thank our speakers that have come in today, both from the private sector and then our employee associations and our law enforcement elected representatives, Sheriff Youngblood and DA Zimmer. You and Mr. Coffrin and the folks that he represents, and also our KCDOA president, Brian Andrews, they know very well the challenge that public safety is facing now in Kern County. So much of that is not our fault. So much of that is driven by policies in Sacramento that have made all of our residents less safe in this state that used to be the best place to live in the world, and unfortunately isn't that way anymore. And a lot of that is because people simply feel that it's on the wrong track, and I think it's on the wrong track when it comes to public safety, probably more than anything else. I also want to thank Mr. Alsop and Mr. Zervis and your staff for putting together such a thorough presentation, but I also want to thank you for the years that you have led in finding ways where this county can become more efficient, where we can spend the revenues that we do have more creatively and smarter, and we've done that. I believe that we have made steps for efficiencies and cost cutting that have been quite revolutionary in a way for local government. But I think we've reached a point where we've cut what we can, and now we're looking at having to take potentially from other departments in order to bolster public safety. If this continues on, we'll be looking at, I fear, shuttering departments in order to, or cutting them severely in order to just support public safety in this county. And I don't think that that is the kind of county that we want to live in, where all we do is public safety. We aren't able to do quality of life anymore. And I think that that potentially is what's on the horizon. When I spoke the last week about this issue, I was lamenting the timing. I said, the need is obviously there, and the need is clearly there from the presentation that staff has shown us today and last Tuesday, but also from the testimony from our public safety partners and also our private sector partners and Ms. Oviatt. You talk about investment from outside the county. People don't want to invest in a community if they don't think the community is safe and the people who work for them are going to be safe. I hear so much, Mr. Zoller, from Mr. Bielli, who runs Tejon Ranch, about the issues that are happening at the outlets with the thefts, the break-ins, the brazen break-ins, the brazen theft that occurs, and the difficulty for law enforcement to respond to those. And so that impacts so very much people's desire to shop in those places, and also for people's desire to want to open a store at the outlets or anywhere else in the unincorporated area. But as I was lamenting the timing of this, I was talking so much about what's going on in the economy right now, with inflation, with gas prices, and how the timing right now is really terrible to put a tax on when people are already paying more. But over the last week, I thought, there's a different way to look at timing. You can look at timing and you can say that right now the situation with public safety is dire in this county, that the future, unfortunately, is grim if we continue down this path. And I believe it's critical to do something now to help address the staffing in our public safety departments. Violent crime is up, and it's up at unprecedented levels, and we hear that every day. And I hear that from my constituents, and the survey results reflect exactly what this board has identified as priorities. And so I think that that's very good that we are in sync with what our constituents are telling us through those surveys. And it's in sync with what staff has been putting forward to us as budget priorities each and every year. We have a problem that I think needs to be solved, and I think that we should give the voters an opportunity to take this county's destiny into their hands for a moment, and have an opportunity to vote on this question on whether or not we want to make an investment in public safety in this county, or if we want to continue down the road, which I think is going to lead to essentially having to take from every other service that this county provides in order to just support the sheriff and the DA and probation and fire. And I'm not sure that that's the kind of county that everyone wants to live in. So thank you. Those are my comments. Supervisor Maggard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The right thing to do is to allow the constituents of unincorporated Kern County to make their own decision about their own future. The wrong thing to do is to deny them that opportunity. So I'll support the opportunity that they'll have to decide for themselves what level of service they need.
Excuse me, Supervisor Peters.
Thank you, Chairman. Last Tuesday, I was pretty sure we needed to put this before the voters, and then Wednesday rolls around, and I was pretty sure that wasn't the right way to go. And I went back and forth a few times, and right now, if I'm being honest, I'm just about as sure as I was last week. Most people only really get to interact with public safety when it's an emergency or when it's their time of need, but it's been really interesting as supervisor getting a chance to interact with our sheriffs, our prosecutors, our firefighters, and see all that hard work, see the need that there is on a much more routine level, and have a lot of those conversations. And there definitely is a need. We need to get more people in these departments. We need to get our public safety better equipment. We need to get them the tools to keep our communities safe. No arguing that. The other side of that coin, though, is, as we've heard, inflation is through the roof. And instead of letting us drill, instead of letting us ease restrictions on industries here, I heard today California decided to send a $1,000 check in inflation relief out to 23 million people. It's just mind-boggling. Gas prices are through the roof right now. And again, instead of letting us do what we do best and put people to work, drilling for oil, creating local revenues, lowering fuel prices, we've been importing the vast majority of our oil. 50%, I think, of our oil right now is imported from Ecuador, that just announced that they were going to be ceasing all oil production within the next 48 hours. So if you think gas prices are high right now, just buckle up. We've tried to be good partners with the state on renewable energy. and they've not allowed us to collect revenues, as we've heard. Would have amounted to close to $20 million a year. Kern County residents are essentially subsidizing California's renewable energy. This seems like it's become the norm in dealing with the state, and frankly, we need to be fighting like hell every day against everything that California is doing. Ultimately, I understand that we have a need for this, and there's, again, no question about that. And I also, though, have a hard time asking constituents right now to increase that financial burden when I go out and talk to people in the Kern River Valley and those areas. Ultimately, though, I think whether or not I think that this is the right time for this, I do have to make a choice on it, and I think my best option is to let residents make that choice as well. So I think I will support this, although I would like to ask our CAO, Mr. Alsop, if he could go into a little more detail about some of the efforts we've made in pushing back on California. I know we've heard about some of them today. I know Mr. Nelson, Mr. Coffern both acknowledge those, Ms. Oviatt, but if you could kind of expand on that a little bit on what some of those efforts are, or what might be other things we're looking at as far as pushing back on California.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. Through the chair, Supervisor Peters, and I will allow Lorelei to also jump in because she is involved. I mean, for one, we sued the governor. That got thrown out by a court, but we've joined with other parties to continue to pursue a legal route, pushing back, because we believe the governor's actions have been unconstitutional. So we've been all in on that. We have been really leading an organized communications effort with professional communicators, really doing a national education campaign to make sure that that people in Sacramento have an understanding. Really, at the end of the day, it's people in Sacramento having an understanding about the decisions that they're making. It's not just checking a box. It's not going out and buying a new EV vehicle or a new stove that's just electric. These are real. These decisions are consequential, having real impacts in places like Kern County, a very poor area in the state, making sure that they have an understanding. And we're seeing some sign that some of that is working through comments that are made by folks, whether it's at a committee meeting or on the Senate floor. Some of that communication is working. But I could help just to finish it out. I could point you to a video of Senator Grove on the Senate floor 3 weeks ago, essentially begging passionately and at times emotionally her Senate colleagues to end the solar tax exclusion, which has taken about $103 million from the county over the last decade. It's a compelling video, and she's joined by other Central Valley representatives that make equally as passionate a plea. And they left it all on the playing field. And it goes to a vote, and we get crushed. It's not even close. Not even a close vote. It's demonstrative of who Sacramento is being controlled by. It is not controlled by the Central Valley. It is not controlled by Kern County. Sacramento is controlled by the Bay Area and Los Angeles. I know because I used to work in Los Angeles, and I used to do the lobbying in Los Angeles. We are doing everything that we can. We're working with our fire union, our sheriff's union, our legislative delegation. We're sending people to Sacramento. We are coordinating, making sure that we're involved. We have a voice, that our legislative delegation has what they need to be effective advocates for this county. We are, it is a full-time job on a weekly basis here. But at the end of the day, it's very hard to get any movement on anything. We've been lucky. Hard Rock Hotel and Casino. It's taken a while, but it looks like that is finally going to get over the line. That's a big project for our county, big project for the Tohono Tribe. That's like one example of big success, and we're thankful for it. But it is tough trying to get anything done up in Sacramento. Lorelei, do you want to add anything of value to that?
I do. Thank you, Chairman Scrivener, through the chair, Supervisor Peters. I appreciate that for the public and for your board, it is hard to see all of the work that is actually happening. I'm honored to be on the team, but it is a small but mighty team that we have at the CAO's office on legislative items. And there is not a day that goes by that I am not invited to speak to committee chairs, to speak to staff. We are making incremental changes. But as a reminder on the solar tax exclusion, your board has adopted a mitigation measure that means that whether the solar tax exclusion is ever changed again, we will be made whole on our projects. Our cumulative impact charge. In reality, we are actually fighting for other counties. We are fighting for the principle of the matter at this point, since we have come up with strategies through the California Environmental Quality Act to address that issue. That is who Kern County is. We refuse to wait for Sacramento. And we will continue, however, to at all times, Supervisor Scrivener can attest that there isn't an hour that goes by that he's not asked to sign another letter on some of this legislation. The legislative world is, for people who have not experienced it, is very, very quick and very, very intense. And sometimes we are talking at 7 or 8 o'clock at night to our lobbyists and to this team. So I assure you, on the other, we continue to believe in our oil and gas EIR. We are working diligently to move forward to reopen permitting. Because it's in litigation, I cannot say anything else, but I assure you, we are working to resolve that issue. And the highest environmental protections your board has placed on oil and gas permitting, and we are committed to supporting our industry to reestablish that. And I really appreciate the question, since it's not as transparent, all the work that we're actually doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sovia and Mr. Alsop. One more question. I know you had talked a little bit about Lean Six Sigma and the efforts that have been made there. And I went and looked back at the website that had some of that information on it. And it looked like it was in the process of being updated. So I don't know if maybe just some of the information hadn't been uploaded or not, but the most recent stats I could find on there were from, I think, 2018. And so I had some of that previous data, but just from the last few years, could you talk a little bit more about some of the efforts or projects or you know, what successes we've been having in that Six Sigma program?
Yes, sir. We number one, we're making sure that when we onboard new talent here in the county, we're making sure that training in Lean Six Sigma is a requirement. And with time, I believe that will have some significant impacts on the overall environment and culture, work office culture here in the county. We are really trying to incentivize and promote opportunities for management and county leadership to go through training, and in fact, try to achieve green belt status or higher in Lean Six Sigma. Yes, our website shows data through about 2018 with the $20 million in savings. What happened was we were in the middle of a big planning session to find ways to reinvigorate, if you will, not that it needed to be recreated, but reinvigorated so that we continue. This is all about continuous momentum. You cannot let Lean Six Sigma sit on a shelf and sort of lose steam, because it's very hard to get back. How do we continue momentum around the effort? During those talks, we had a plan. The pandemic hit. You know what happened. We for a long time, everything was being done on Zoom, and we just got kind of sidetracked. We were all a little busy doing things. We are bringing that back a couple of weeks ago. maybe even last week, I can't remember, we just had a very big countywide Lean Six Sigma event, which is an example of Lean Six Sigma events that we'll be having regularly. These are competitive events where we are taking customer service problems, trying to save money, trying to be more efficient, and having teams compete for acknowledgement by your board and other rewards, and making sure that we're reporting out on that. And we've done, I know Allie has been talking about it and some of her programming she's been putting out. So that's where we are with Lean Six Sigma. The website is being updated to reflect our most recent event and some of the numbers from that. But that is again, it's part of our culture, part of our organization, and we are continuing to make sure that we're sort of rooted when we make decisions. All of our decision making is rooted in Lean Six Sigma. I just got handed a note. There's a new microsite being established and will be published, including a dashboard that will drill down on some of the numbers even more in depth, savings, hours saved, money saved, et cetera.
Great, appreciate that. I think my last question for right now would be for our county council, Ms. Razon. On the ballot language, it says that this would continue until ended by voters. So does that mean if this were to be ended at some point, it would be the same process that we're putting it on by? The board would put it out to a vote and then voters would have to vote yes or no on it? Or would it need to be a citizen initiative to take that off or to end that essentially, or how would that work?
Supervisor Peters, through the chair. It could come back in either way. Either the board could go through this process or it could go forward by way of a citizen's initiative.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's it for now.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Couch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Someone told me a long time ago that if you get a good staff and you just want to show up on Tuesdays and vote yes, this is a fairly simple job. This is not one of those Tuesdays, however, that they warned me about. I want to speak for a second to the Lean Six Sigma comments you just made. And I want to thank Gene Boylan for his involvement and his support of that effort when we started it. There was a lot of, I think that might predate you, Ryan. I think it started maybe a year or so before you got here. But there was a lot of pushback and hesitancy. I think a lot of employees thought it was, and I'm not singling out just the employees, but I think some people thought maybe it was going to create an opportunity to terminate their job, get rid of their employment, and that is not at all what it was after. And I think employees now understand that. And I had the opportunity last week to be a judge at that contest, and I would encourage my colleagues to do that. I was very impressed with our employees and the problems that they were undertaking themselves to work on. Some were cost savings, some were just getting things done faster for their customers. A lot of participation from the Department of Human Services, Child Support Services. We even had a team there from the East Kern Air Pollution Control District, all looking at things they do in their job and how they can do them better, faster, more efficiently. So I'm a big supporter of you and how you've picked up that mantle of that, and we'll hope you continue that. And again, Gene, thank you for. This is before you were retired, so you took time out of your day to do that for us, and I appreciate that. Two things I want to talk about, and I want to sort of cut to the chase. Nobody, at least I don't, nobody wants to put this even on the ballot because we don't want people to have to pay more for anything. That's number one. The ballot question asks or uses the language, shall the measure be adopted establishing a 1 cent sales tax in unincorporated Kern County? If you look through the resolution and the ordinance that are attached to the board letter, we never refer to it as a 1 cent tax unless we include the number 1%. We refer to it as a 1% tax a few times in the resolution and the ordinance. And so in the language that's going to go before the voters, in my opinion, should say 1%, not 1 cent. That might seem like a very trivial item, but I've asked probably 12, maybe 15 people just to take a look at the wording and tell me what you think. And about half of them said, was it 1% or 1 cent? Because I've heard you guys talk about this. I said, okay, that's enough for me to know that is there ambiguity in that? And I think the voters, and I'm not saying you're trying to do this, but I want the voters to know exactly what is being requested of them to vote on. That's one. Secondly, and this is along the lines of what Supervisor Peters discussed. Well, do you want to comment on that before I go to item 2?
I understand your question.
The question is, can we change that from 1 cent to 1%?
You can. I believe it was written. It was written the way we're recommending proceeding, but you could change that, yes.
Okay. So I would be supportive of that. Secondly, one thing we all have beliefs that I'll just stop with that, beliefs that we try to hold to, that we sort of govern the way we think about the job we do up here. And one of them for me has always been try not to commit to something that you can't end at some point. I don't remember, I think it might have been Ronald Reagan said the closest thing to eternal life is a government program. This doesn't have an end date. And in struggling and thinking about this question, which I've been thinking about for a few weeks now, and when I see the ballot language, or what would be placed before the voters, $54 million is a lot of money. I think we'll see the impacts of that within a couple of years, 2 to 3 years, certainly within 5 years. That led me to say, okay, why don't we have a sunset clause in 10 years? Because I believe it's incumbent upon government to go back to the voters from time to time and make the case for why we are asking them to pay what they're paying. And this is an opportunity for us to do that. As I sit here today and I heard the presentations, and I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of our sheriff, our DA, our fire chief, our planning director. They probably think longer than 10 years out. At least I hope they do. I'm pretty sure they do. So as I sit here today, I had thought that maybe a 10-year sunset clause was appropriate, but I'm willing to extend that, I think, to 20. That coincides with what we had done. I've been in, I don't know if this is true or not, but I know that I have supported a sales tax in the past. It was a long time ago, and it was for transportation, specifically for transportation projects all over the county. It had a 20-year sunset clause, and everybody knew exactly what the projects were going to be all over the county. We can't tell people exactly what they're going to get. We can give them an indication of what our priorities are, and that's what the ballot language does. So in my view, I think a 20-year sunset clause is appropriate. I can live with 10, but I think 20 is easier for department heads to plan with. And I think the 1% wording versus the 1 cent wording is more appropriate, and I feel much better about. Those are my comments, Mr. I don't even believe we have a motion on the floor at this point, do we?
You're right, Couch.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to ask a question about that, Supervisor Couch. On the sunset clause, you're referring to Measure I believe I think it was I. It was before I was in elected office, but it was the half cent sales tax for road projects. And that had specific projects, a specific project list, and the costs were figured based on the scope of the projects, et cetera.
And therefore you needed a 2/3 vote too.
Exactly, yeah, because it was dedicated. And so I'm wondering if that sunset clause was in place because that was the projection on when those projects would be completed. And with this situation, the job of public safety is never completed. And so I'm a little.
You're correct.
I'm a little curious about whether or not that was why that sunset clause was in place, because you had a specific project list with specific costs, and it was over a 20-year period of time that they were projecting that it would take to complete those.
I don't recall if they thought the projects would be completed in 20 years. I think they thought the 20 years worth of revenue would fund the projects, whether they were completed after that or not.
Right.
Falling back on responding to what you said, I just feel like a lot can change in 10 years, certainly in 20 years. Lorelei gets very successful with carbon capture. The Tejon casino comes online and creates more of a revenue stream. Tejon, the Grapevine project, and even up in I've forgotten what you call the Mountain Community Project, Mountain Village, comes online, generating more property tax and sales tax. Things can change over 20 years, and I just felt like incumbent upon us is to make sure that we continue to make the case to taxpayers that this is needed, and we not get complacent and just view this as another income stream. Thank you.
Supervisor Perez.
Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor Couch. I think your remarks are poignant. I have not heard from my public safety experts that they believe or I've not heard this aspect of it. So I'm just going to assume that our public safety costs over the years are going to skyrocket, balloon. And I feel like the quality of our public safety, the amount of money we're able to pay people that we are asking to run into AK-47s. Okay? This is a reality for frontline law enforcement. We've seen it in this county. We are going to continue to see it. I don't believe that's going to change. So the amount of money it will take to incorporate and keep the finest law enforcement, the highest quality, that are prepared to take on the kind of threats of the future. We know what soft targets are like in America today. We have real challenges and problems of which we need to become better equipped than ever before to take on for a civil and orderly society. So I obviously I'm only one person on this body. I do appreciate Supervisor Couch's position. I do believe many people would appreciate such a position. Having not heard that up to this point, I am going to proceed and make a motion on the original staff recommendation, which I trust thoroughly, that has been vetted by many private sector actors in this community. On behalf of, I'm going to make my Limfesti Zoller motion and say we are proceeding as one community here to properly secure civility and safety in this community. Full throttle, full steam ahead. So I'm going to make a motion on the original staff recommendation. Of course, I'm curious about friendly amendments, but that is my motion, and I say it with all due respect, Supervisor. Thank you to my colleagues.
Thank you, Supervisor. County Council is punched in.
Thank you, Chairman Scrivener. Before there's a second or a vote, I just wanted to ask the board to, there's a couple of places that there are some typographical errors and then a change that's been recommended by Ms. Oviatt in the resolution, and I just wanted to get those onto the record so that the documents are very clear at the time that you might vote on them. On the resolution on page 3, down near the bottom, it's subset U or subsection U. We'd like to change the phrase carbon capture to carbon manager. So the end of, carbon management. So the end of that phrase would say, and being a national leader in carbon management, and that is in the resolution. And in the ordinance, on page 2, under the table of contents, so to speak, near the very bottom, section 4.18.200, it says Citizen Advisory Committee. That should read Citizen Oversight Committee. That's explained in the board letter, and the intent is that it says Citizen Oversight Committee. And likewise, on page 8 of the ordinance, under the heading of 4.18.200, again, it says Citizen Oversight Committee. That should say Citizen, it says Citizen Advisory, it should say Citizen Oversight Committee, and in the text of that section where it says Citizen Advisory Committee, that should be changed to Citizen Oversight Committee. Those are the changes that I'd like to have incorporated into the documents.
Thank you, Ms. Rezon. Supervisor Peters, excuse me.
Thank you, Chairman Scrivener. Points well taken on those. I don't see any issues with that. And I know Supervisor Perez has made a motion, but in thinking about what Supervisor Couch said, putting this before the voters right now is a good idea. And I think putting this back in front of the voters is, will be just as good an idea then as it is now. So I think that to support this, I would like to see that that sunset clause in there. I think it just gives people the chance to relook at this and redetermine whether or not this is beneficial for them down the road.
May I, as the maker of the motion?
Yes, Supervisor.
Sheriff Youngblood, would you come and give us some expertise, please? It's out of my wheelhouse.
Thank you. I absolutely believe by placing a 20-year sunset on this, we're setting up a board 20 years from now. They're going to lay people off because that money it's all relative, doesn't matter what the money is, but we're going to be laying people off 20 years from now. And more importantly than that, we're trying to recruit and retain, and we can't sell recruitment on a 20-year plan. This is a career that we're trying to sell, and I would beg this board to not place a sunset. If we need to do away with it down the road, we could put it on the ballot. This board could and easily pass it, but to go the other way is almost impossible. So I think we were making a big mistake if we go that direction.
Yeah, of course. You still have the floor, Supervisor.
Thank you so much, Chairman. Thank you, Sheriff. That was my sense, but thank you for your actual expertise. And with the fullest respect, Peters, we're good friends. I have to listen to my sheriff when I think about culture and what we're trying to do here to build up a community style of policing that is well-funded, that's based in our neighborhoods, that is a new chapter. It takes a lot of money to do that. And the sort of handicap of thinking about this money coming to an end, I heard from my sheriff, is just at this time not a friendly amendment I want to take. Of course, you can make your own motion. We're friends no matter what, but I'm going to keep my motion as originally stated. With all due respect, Peters.
The CAO has punched in. Mr. Alsop.
Yeah, I just wanted to lend my voice, and I'm just going to be totally honest, which I try to keep with in all my comments. Personally, I don't really care about 20 years. I won't be here. I'll be 71, and if I'm still alive, I don't know. I'm not going to be here. I don't think a lot of people in this room are going to be here. But be here in the positions that we're in. And so, if that's how I feel personally, but professionally, I've got to agree with the sheriff on this, and it's just something that we need to think about. No matter how many years away, we would be setting up a future board in an organization, and really the public that they're serving, whatever that looks like in 20 years' time, and hopefully it's great. We could potentially be setting them up for failure. They could be struggling in 20 years, but let's say that we work really well and we're going to work really hard and we're going to do all these things and get them done and we're on a great trajectory in 20 years. This, having this sunset would immediately blow, potentially a $100 million hole in the county's budget, potentially, if we do a good job diversifying our economy, building business, increasing sales tax receipts, et cetera, which is substantial. And that's overnight. And it's to the sheriff's point of, that's, how do you prepare for that? And, and maybe that's the case that a board 20 years from now takes to the public and, they spend their time and money and effort on educating the public so that everybody was clear on it. But I just wanted to provide those comments to you. I professionally would be cautious about setting the county up for a significant catalyst event around this in the future. But if you ask me personally, I won't be around.
Supervisor Maggard, did you punch in?
Thank you. It's an ongoing, we're talking about spending money on an ongoing basis. I think it warrants an ongoing source of revenue. And I'm happy to, I wouldn't say happy is the right word. Dutifully, I will second the motion.
Mike, thank you so much.
Any other comments from members of the board? Supervisor Peters?
Thank you, Chairman. So I know that the Citizens Oversight Committee was a component of this. Is there any set in stone definition on how that works, or is that something that will be built as we go along? I mean, is there, once a year they come and report to the board on their findings, or is it an ongoing conversation, or what do we envision that looking like?
Mr. Zervis has tapped me on the shoulder, so I'm going to let him answer this.
Sure. Thank you. Supervisor Peters, through the chair. The ordinance actually doesn't speak to the nuts and bolts of how that oversight body is going to be comprised and the specifics. So, but it does say that your board will create that organization through a resolution before the operative date of the ordinance. So that'll be a separate topic brought back before your board to deal with specifically.
Very good. Thank you.
Any other comments from board members? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved, 4 ayes, 1 opposed. Supervisor Couch.
Thank you. That brings us to the next item on our agenda, which is item number 39 under probation. I'll ask our probation chief, T.R. Miracle, to come forward. This is a request to issue request for proposal for comprehensive community-based services for criminal justice offenders as approved by the Community Corrections Partnership.
So we're officially at good afternoon, Chairman Scrivener. And
you're not T.R. Miracle.
I'm not. I am Scott Royer, his Deputy Chief Probation Officer.
Welcome.
Thank you. So as you know, Chief Miracle is the chairperson of the Community Correction Partnership. And the Community Correction Partnership meets regularly to discuss the implementation of realignment and the safety of the community and provides a plan every year to the board. The CCP consists of probation, sheriff, district attorney, public defender, Bakersfield Police Department, ETR, and many others. The CCP takes public safety very seriously and works to hold offenders accountable for their actions, yet still provide them the opportunity to change. The resources provided by this RFP are the opportunity. The CCP's goal is to partner with community-based organizations that will provide services that ensure positive outcomes for criminal justice offenders in Kern County with an aim at reducing criminal recidivism and increasing public safety. Since the beginning of realignment, the CCP has used community-based organizations to provide resources to offenders, and to date has awarded over $16 million in contracts to multiple community-based organizations providing services to male and female offenders re-entering the community. CBO services target the needs of the offenders and reduce barriers to allow them to successfully complete supervision and change their lives. The current request for proposal is worth just under $8 million for 3 years, beginning January 1st, 2023, and running through December 31st, 2025. The RFP opens June 30th, 2022. There is a pre-proposal meeting on July 12th, 2022, and the deadline for submission is August 5th, 2022. The target areas for this RFP are housing, educational, vocational, and employment services, case management, and other evidence-based practices or best practices. Therefore, it is recommended your board authorize the Chief Probation Officer to distribute the RFP to provide CBO services to criminal justice offenders in Kern County. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any members of the audience that would like to make any questions or comments on this item? Okay, seeing none, I'll return to the board for any questions, comments, or a motion.
Not as much excitement as the last one, huh? Sorry,
I guess
Chairman.
nobody's interested in this one.
Chairman, I'm sorry.
Supervisor Perez.
Mike, thank you for what you do. It's such important work. Thank you. I make a motion to staff's recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved. All ayes.
Thank you. That brings us to the conclusion of our agenda. With no closed session items to consider, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn to 2 p.m.
So moved.
We are adjourned.
Thank you.